I could just follow up, maybe a question really for the chief, but have there been any arrests in these 8 deaths?
There have not been any arrests at this point in time. Yes, one question at a time, please.
Federal regulations say that room temperature in these facilities needs to be between 71 and 81 degrees. How hot was it in there?
That's part of our investigation. We're looking into the temperature inside the facility, the staffing inside the facility, and all of the conditions inside the facility in the hours leading up to this situation.
But can you say, and several people have told us, it was 100 degrees, if not more so.
I can't provide any information on the precise temperatures inside the facility. I don't have that information at this time. Yes.
What can you tell us to follow up on that? 2 basic questions here. Number 1, what time did the transformer go out or the AC go out? And what was the final time on the first 911 call? That time window, what can you tell us about that? And secondly, the backup generator, the generator that they had here, did it have the capability to tie into the AC system in addition to the life support and other medical systems? Those are 2 critical questions.
I understand that those are, questions.
Hi guys, welcome to the stream. You are watching Fox 5 Live here inside our newsroom in DC. You're watching right now a feed in, I believe, Naples, Florida. They're giving an update on the nursing home. Rather, it's Hollywood, Florida. The nursing home that was affected by Irma. There's actually 8 now confirmed deaths in that nursing home due to damage there. So we've been kind of following this and hearing updates on how they're faring and what exactly happened at this nursing home. So let's listen in here live from Hollywood, Florida.
Hollywood PD, I'm sorry, www.hollywoodfl.org, hollywoodfl.org, and we'll put all of our news releases that we've put out up to this time on that. We did provide a time frame for the first 911 call that came in leading to this incident and the evacuation of the facility.
But the person that was found on Tuesday, when was that person found?
There was the person that was found on Tuesday was died in the facility. The facility had a do not resuscitate order on that individual and then was transferred to a nursing home. Not nursing home, I'm sorry, to a funeral home. Yes, thank you. To a funeral home. And then as we began this investigation, we were made aware of that death and we went to the funeral home. The medical examiner went to the funeral home and did claim that body, and that is now part of this investigation. No, we were not called related to that.
When that person dies on Tuesday, does anyone from the nursing home raise a red flag that a crisis is unfolding?
We became aware that a crisis was unfolding at the facility after multiple calls in the early morning hours. Our fire rescue.
Immediately after that person is found dead, nobody raises a red flag and says, we have a problem here.
The details of all of the outreach calls, that's all part of the investigation, and you're asking for a very definitive answer, and unfortunately I can't give you that answer right now, and I don't want to mislead you on that issue, because we know that's an important issue for people, and we don't have a definitive on that right now.
Were there any working doctors inside the nursing home at the time?
We are looking into the staffing of the facility and how it was staffed. That is part of the investigation, and I know that that is also part of the state's investigation. One more question.
For the patients who are in the hospital and once they're found to be in good condition, where do they go from here? Because obviously this facility is shut down, so where will the patients go?
They are being transferred to other skilled nursing facilities, and or if they need other type of care, long-term care, they'll be transitioned to long-term care facilities in the state. And as you know, that is a difficult proposition. There are not as many beds and facilities available as there are people with needs, and so we are working through that very closely. Memorial is working very closely, even with our state offices and state representatives to facilitate that.
Unrelated to the investigation.
This really is the last question. Yes, go ahead.
Have a generator to
run the air conditioner, to your knowledge, regulatorily?
You are asking someone who is not an expert in the regulations related to, yes, and you all have as much knowledge about that probably as I do. Thank you, everyone. We will try to provide updates, but it will not be in this format going forward. Well, we will continue to put out releases, and any new releases will be posted on the city's website. If you've not provided us with your contact information, please do so, and we'll make sure that you are added to our media distribution list and you get updates. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The other 42 nursing homes.
How do we get added to the media list?
All right, guys, so that was an update on the nursing home that was severely affected by Irma. And if you remember, during that whole week, we had Caitlin Roth on to talk about the storm, and just as we were tracking it, and actually I think we just lost that one, but so we're going to bring up this picture, but we're going to talk a little more about the weather in general and sort of where this storm lies now and what's happening with the movement, I guess, of Jose and everything.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So Irma's long gone, thank goodness. In fact, the rain that we had sort of yesterday, but actually we're going to have some showers later on this afternoon. Some thunderstorms that's associated with the very bare bones of what's left of Irma, as you know, it made landfall across the west coast of Florida early Sunday morning, caused all the problems that we've been reporting on. You know, I talked with you all last week. We knew it was going to be hitting Florida, but at the last minute, instead of the East Coast or Central Florida, it hit the West Coast Florida. But you know, Florida's small, so everyone was affected, and that's what we feared. But Irma, even though causing a lot of damage, did weaken a bit, and so that was helpful when it came to storm surge. And a lot of people did evacuate and take this seriously. So yes, Irma's behind us now, but we're watching Jose, and that tracker is on your screen right there. Now, Jose, if you can remember last week, has was behind Irma all week long in the Atlantic, just kind of cruising alongside of it. And luckily, Jose, while still a Category 1 hurricane and out there in the middle Atlantic spinning around, hasn't been a threat to any landfall yet. So all of the islands that actually, you know, the islands in the Caribbean fared the worst with Irma. I mean,
I was going to ask you, let's give a little update on that. What do we know what was decimated? St. Virgin Islands?
Yeah, so St. Martin, Barbuda, Anguilla, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Cuba, Turks and Caicos. They were all hit by a Cat 5 storm, Irma. And you know, Irma, that's when Irma was at her peak strength. These islands are tiny, they're exposed, and so the damage that we're seeing out of them is really pronounced, and they've really been struggling in the days since. People can't find food, they can't find water, there's looting, there's robbery.
Right, we saw a lot of that looting.
Yeah, it's really bad. But
so they're trying to rebuild.
They're trying to rebuild, and the last thing they needed was another hurricane to hit them. So luckily, Jose is far north of all of those islands and south of Bermuda, and it's just kind of in no man's land right now, right? And so it's still Category 1 hurricane. It's, as you look at the track, it's expected to stay at Cat 1 through Tuesday. So here we go, another incredibly slow-moving Jose, who's kind of stuck in this loop in the middle of the Atlantic, which is fine. If you want him stuck, you want him stuck over open water.
If it's stuck over open water, correct me if I'm wrong, does that mean it like gains strength in the water though, because it's not on land? You
know, it can gain strength, or it can just maintain itself, which is, we saw Irma rapidly gain strength, and Jose has not gotten to Irma's level.
Okay.
A lot of that, for technical reasons I don't need to get into, is the fact that it was kind of behind Irma, and Irma was, so to speak, sucking up all the energy.
Okay.
And in its wake, there wasn't really the right breeding ground for Jose. But anyways, Jose's Cat 1, it's in the middle of the Atlantic, it's no threat to land right now. But this track, which is somewhere in between the U.S. coast and Bermuda, which is a huge chunk of ocean, has been shifting a little bit further westward. And the concern is that maybe eventually, if Jose can't spin itself out, it will get trapped somehow and come along the East Coast.
So are there some ramifications maybe for DC?
There could be. I mean, the thing is, most models keep this guy staying out to sea, and then it'll eventually get kind of like loop around Bermuda far off to the north and just kind of go away, right? And so this happens with hurricanes, a lot of them. They eventually just wear themselves out and they go away. So we hope that happens with Jose, but you know, there has been just a couple rogue models that take this guy right up along the East Coast and impacting, you know, our area maybe later next week. But we don't have enough agreement, and it's too early to say that's going to happen. So we just, we're going to stick with this. We're going to stick with this path that Jose is going to stay out to sea and not impact the U.S. East Coast. But it's definitely still worth watching.
And then quickly on Irma, it went west instead of east. So a recap of that, it mostly hit Tampa. Is that right?
I think it made 2 landfalls, one along the Keys, and the Keys are also just like the Caribbean islands, super exposed, flat at sea level, and they were hit by a Cat 4 Irma, so a little bit weaker than a Cat 5, which hit the Leeward Islands, Turks and Caicos, places like that, but still a massive hurricane, and that's where you see the most damage. Marathon, Florida, I think, is the one spot that's had the worst of Irma. For the U.S. And then it went kind of northeastward from the Keys, straight up and made a second landfall along Marco Island, which I think is right off the coast of Naples.
I think it is. I know it very well. Yeah, I actually know someone from there, which is crazy. I should give her a call.
Yeah,
check in.
Hopefully she got out of town. But the interesting thing about Irma is that, a lot of the preparations, it was going to hit Miami, it was going to hit Miami, it was going to hit Southern Florida, but at the last second made a...
Isn't that crazy?
And was headed straight for Naples.
How rare is that? Is that common?
It's not rare for it to hit Southwest Florida. Many hurricanes have hit Southwest Florida. And Florida is such a tiny landmass in comparison to the size of this hurricane that we knew whether it hit the East Coast or the West Coast, there would be impacts. But I got to tell you, a lot of the emphasis until probably the last day or two was on the East Coast of Florida, not the West Coast. So I don't think Naples, Fort Myers, Tampa ever anticipated a landfalling hurricane.
Wow. Yeah. Speaking of those locations, I'm going to flash really quick to this live shot of Air Force One. President Trump is down there. He went down to Fort Myers early this morning, and now he's on his way to Naples. So he's going to be assessing the devastation down in Florida, and we're going to be getting a bunch of different live bits in from down there, Vero Beach, a lot of other things. So still getting, there we go, we just switched the shot again.
Cool.
But they did sort of like an overlook of what it looked like and whatnot. But we'll keep you tuned to that as we get those feeds in. But let's talk really quickly about weather just in our area.
Oh yeah, okay. So here's how things play out for us. So like I said, showers and thunderstorms later this afternoon, which is actually finally 2 weeks later after it formed, we are seeing the effects of Irma.
These are the effects of Irma. Okay.
So literally, we've been tracking the storm courtesy of what's left of a low pressure system that was associated with Irma. Now, tomorrow, Friday, is generally a nice day. We could still see a thunderstorm or two in the afternoon, but there's less of a chance, and we're in the midst of clearing out. Mike put a stray shower in the forecast on Saturday and Sunday. I honestly think it's going to be a really nice weekend. That stray shower chance is pretty minimal, and it's mostly sunny and in the 80s. It's mostly a really nice weekend for us. So last weekend was nice, but it was pretty cool. So this weekend's going to be a little warmer. Now, see how Monday, Tuesday it says a few showers possible. That is kind of like our CYA for Jose in case some of the moisture from Jose gets close enough to us, we would be seeing some showers Monday and Tuesday. But again, that's not necessarily going to happen. It could just be sunny Monday, Tuesday, and into Wednesday. So we're kind of putting a shower chance in there, but we do actually think it'll just end up staying out to sea and being a pretty nice couple of days.
Great. Well, that sounds like a good forecast.
It's much calmer, a lot better than when I was here last, Molly.
So we thought fall was going to hit, but it sounds like it's staying hot for now.
Well, it's so weird because we had such a cool end of August, early September, and now we're kind of getting some of that warmth back. And these are actually normal temperatures for early mid-September, maybe a little bit warm, but fall officially begins next Friday, the 22nd. It looks pretty warm leading up to it.
So good. Thanks so much, Caitlin.
Yeah, no problem.
Good update. All right, guys, we're going to keep you. Yeah, you too. Caitlin will head out and do her stuff for the day.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
All right, I'll be back in case Jose starts acting up.
Yeah, definitely do. Guys, we're going to flash you down to Riviera Beach, Florida, where they're talking about the power and the light and update with all the fallout from Irma. So we have that coming in live. Let's check in.
Again, our laser focus is getting people's power back on, and we're giving you the information that we have as we have it. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for your time.
Guys, we're going to continue to bring you this footage of President Trump's visit to Florida. Just remember, it is all live and raw video, so kind of we have no discernment over where the camera goes or zooms in, but this is a live look at his visit to Florida. And there's Vice President Pence coming out as well. They're both down there together to assess the devastation in Fort Myers and Naples. And we'll kind of watch this for a second. In a minute here, we're going to flash over to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. He's meeting in a joint press conference with the British Foreign Minister. And so we're going to check in there before we don't have that feed anymore live. All right, so let's mix it up. We'll go over to the Secretary of State.
As I said, we're very thankful for the UK's leadership, and the Foreign Secretary in particular has been stellar in terms of supporting our efforts on North Korea, from sanctions to also implementing those sanctions, finding ways to de-escalate the violence in Syria. And we express our deep gratitude to the United Kingdom for their very generous contributions towards humanitarian assistance to the long-suffering Syrian people as we continue to liberate areas that have suffered under the oppression of ISIS. Along with representatives from France, we had a very substantial meeting to discuss how to increase that diplomatic and economic pressure on the DPRK, and also how we can work together to relay messages to the regime in North Korea that you need to stand down your program and engage in a dialogue to find a way to a peaceful resolution. Foreign Secretary Johnson and I also had very productive discussions, as he indicated, with the French, Italian, Emirati, and Egyptian colleagues, as well as the UN Special Representative for Secretary General Hassan Salameh on the way forward on Libya. Again, an issue that's important to the United States to create stability, reconciliation, and restore Libya under a functioning government. What we don't want to see happen is Libya become a place to birth additional terrorist organizations or provide opportunities for ISIS to reemerge in a different part of the world. So we are all committed to helping the Libyans find the Libyan solution that will lead to their future. I think as Special Representative Salameh works with the Libyans to advance the political reconciliation, it's important that he know that he has the full support of the United States. We think it is time to focus the mediation efforts in one location at the UN under his leadership, and I think we had very strong unity among the group that met today to support the special representatives in his efforts. We will meet again with the UN Secretary General Guterres to consider these issues in New York next week on the margins of the UN General Assembly meeting. Once again, I want to thank Prime Minister May, Foreign Secretary Johnson for their most gracious welcome, for a series of very, very productive meetings today on a host of important topics, some of which we've touched on with you, but most importantly for their commitment to action in the achievement of our common goals. So, Foreign Secretary, thank you again.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you very much. We're going to take a couple of questions. James Landau from the BBC.
James Landau, BBC. First of all, Foreign Secretary, on aid, do you believe that the government should be able to use its aid budget to help people in need in the Caribbean? And if so, what are you going to do about it? Secondly, on Libya, do you actually think that elections next year are feasible? And when do you think they should be held? Thirdly, on Burma, you said last weekend that Aung San Suu Kyi was, and I quote, one of the most inspiring figures of our age. Do you regret saying that now? And has your view changed as a result of the events of this week? And Secretary of State, if I could ask you on Iran, what actually is the position of the United States today on the Iran nuclear deal? Are you going to continue to waiver the sanctions? Do you continue to believe that Iran is fulfilling its obligations of that deal?
Just a quick reminder, guys, that you're watching Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in a joint press conference with the British Foreign Minister. That's in the right corner of your screen. That's live. Also, in the left corner, a live unedited video here of President Trump and the Vice President's visit to Florida. They're there to assess the devastation in Naples, and just earlier they were in Fort Myers. So they're heading around to the areas that were most damaged by Irma. As we heard from Caitlin earlier, what actually happened was not necessarily what was predicted, but that is the case now. So these are both two live videos, guys. Check it out. We're live in the DC Digital Newsroom, and we'll be back with you guys in a little bit.
would want to see spending by our government on getting those people back up on their feet, and indeed on getting those British, and I stress it, British overseas territories helped in the long term. And of course, we are looking now across Whitehall at ways in which we can make sure that our aid budget can be used in that way. And I know that Priti Patel, all my colleagues are looking at how we can do that. That is absolutely natural, and we're on that right now. On Libya, you ask a very important question: is would it be premature to hold elections within a year? I happen to think that that could be about the right timescale. I think it's very important, however, that you don't do it too fast and that you get the political groundwork done first. There has to be a constitution, there has to be an accepted basis for those elections to take place. That is currently not here. You have to amend the Skhirat agreement, the Libyan political agreement. That needs to be done. Everybody understands, broadly speaking, across the actors in Libya what needs to be done, and I think there's a very wide measure of support amongst the Libyan people for getting on with an election, by the way. So I think that the program that Ghassan Salameh has sketched out certainly commanded support this afternoon in the P3+3 in the format that we brought together today. Obviously, what we are hoping is that that will gain further, wider support at UNGA, the UN General Assembly, next week. Thirdly, on Burma and the tragedy that is unfolding and the gross abuse of the human rights of the Rohingya population. And nobody should underestimate what is happening now. 370,000 Rohingya have fled, or estimated to have fled in desperation. That's almost half the Rohingya population in northern Rakhine. And to answer directly your point about Dorsu, State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, let's be clear. She led Burma after a period of decades of repression by a military junta. And I yield to no one in my admiration of what she stood for and the way she fought for democracy. And I think many people around the world share that admiration. But I think it's now vital for her to use that moral capital and that authority to make the point about the suffering of the people of Rakhine. And I think, nobody wants to see a return to military rule in Burma. Nobody wants to see a return of the generals. But it's also vital that the civilian government, and that is Dorsu, for whom, as I say, I have a great deal of admiration, but it is vital for her now to make clear that this is an abomination and that those people will be allowed back, to Burma, and that preparation is being made, and that the abuse of their human rights and the killings, hundreds, perhaps even thousands, that the killings will stop.
Well, first, with respect to the administration's view of the JCPOA and the nuclear deal with Iran, the Trump administration is continuing to review and develop its policy on Iran. It is underway. There have been several discussions internally among our NSC, along with discussions with the president. So no decision has been made. But I think it's worth noting that as the administration continues this review of the JCPOA, I think President Trump has made it clear to those of us who are helping him develop this policy that we must take into account the totality of Iranian threats, not just Iran's nuclear capabilities. That is one piece of our posture towards Iran. And I think if one revisits the preface to the JCPOA, that preface reads that the participants, quote, anticipate that full implementation of this JCPOA will positively contribute to regional and international peace and security, end quote. That was one of the expectations of the JCPOA. In our view, Iran is clearly in default of these expectations of the JCPOA through their actions to prop up the Assad regime, to engage in malicious activities in the region, including cyber activity, aggressively developing ballistic missiles. And all of this is in defiance of UN Security Council Resolution 2231, thereby threatening, not ensuring, but threatening the security of those in the region as well as the United States itself. So we have to consider the totality of Iran's activities and not let our view be defined slowly by the nuclear agreement. So it continues to be under review. No final decision has been made. With respect to the horrors that we are witnessing occurring in Burma, I think it is a defining moment in many ways for this new emerging democracy, although it is a power-sharing arrangement. We all clearly understand that. And so we appreciate the difficult and complex situation Aung San Suu Kyi finds herself in. And I think it is important that the global community speak out in support of what we all know the expectation is towards the treatment of people, regardless of their ethnicity, and that we must, this violence must stop, this persecution must stop. It's been characterized by many as ethnic cleansing. That must stop. And we need to support Aung San Suu Kyi and her leadership, but also be very clear and unequivocal to the military power sharing in that government that this is unacceptable. And this is going to, in many ways, I think, define the direction that Burma will take. They need our strong support. We should give them our strong support.
Secretary Tillerson, on North Korea, President Trump described the UN Security Council resolution that was passed this week as a small step. Do you concur with that assessment? And do you still seek a full oil embargo against North Korea? And do you think China would ever agree to that? And Secretary Johnson, on Iran, the French have signaled a willingness to supplement the nuclear deal to extend sunset provisions. Did that come up in today's conversations? And is Britain open to such a suggestion? And Secretary Tillerson, would the US be open to that as well?
With respect to the UN Security Council resolution and the President's view that it was a small step, I share that view. We had hoped for a much stronger resolution from the Security Council. Having said that, I think it did accomplish a couple of things. One, a complete prohibition on textiles, which does represent somewhere between $700 and $800 million of export revenue to the regime. And I think importantly, the successful conclusion of yet another unanimous UN Security Council resolution in and of itself, I think does continue to send a consistent message to the regime in North Korea, and importantly to those who continue to enable North Korea's activities, that the international community does have a common view on the seriousness of North Korea's proliferation program and the development of their weapons, their nuclear weapons. I think it's clear that with respect to oil and a complete embargo on oil from the UN Security Council, that's going to be very difficult. In effect, that is directed at China alone because China supplies essentially all of North Korea's oil. I am hopeful that China, as a great country, a world power, will decide on their own and will take it upon themselves to use that very powerful tool of oil supply to persuade North Korea to reconsider its current path towards weapons development, reconsider its approach to dialogue and negotiations in the future. That is a very powerful tool. It has been used in the past, and we hope China will not reject that or discard that as a very powerful tool that they alone really have the ability to assert. So we're going to.
All right, guys, we're getting a little bit of a source change right now. This is going to go from London, where he is pictured right now, Secretary of State, back over here to D.C., where Speaker Paul Ryan, there's the switch, is about to speak in his weekly address. We're going to have lots more coming up with Tom Fitzgerald, our regular little political Daily Dish guy. Although I can't coin that term because it's not mine. But he's coming. He knows I can't trademark that. It's not the Daily Dish. But it will be about some of the recent news in politics. You may have heard conservative commentator Ben Shapiro is speaking at Berkeley soon. And actually, Fitz is coming over here now. I'm going to grab him.
Oh.
He's ready.
Don't grab him.
Perfect.
Very
Grab him.
gentle.
Get some hot water? Oh, cold water.
Hot water?
I wasn't sure. Some people drink hot water with lemon, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
I drink vodka.
So while we're waiting for Paul Ryan, because it usually takes a little
Oh, this will be fun.
We'll throw it on to him when he comes up. But
How's Paul Ryan's morning going?
You tell me. What happened yesterday? You were talking. You were following all the.
What happened yesterday is a very big question. All right, because this is what happened yesterday. This is what we know what happened yesterday. We did a story last night talking about how conservative hardliners on the right were sending a very clear warning to the president and Republican leadership that the president had better not enter into a deal last night with his dinner with Chuck and Nancy that would amount to any kind of amnesty for DACA recipients. They weren't even considering the possibility that there would be a no wall component of this. And then last night after the meeting broke up, this all blew up. Senator Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi put out a statement saying that they had reached a deal with the president, that deal would allow DACA recipients to remain in the United States, that there would be added funding for border protection between the United States and Mexico. However, Schumer and Pelosi said that does not include the wall.
Blow up, and now we're waiting on him to speak. What's he going to say?
Well, a lot of people are saying a lot of things right now. Number one of them, Steve Bannon, is back at Breitbart now, and Breitbart wasted no time last evening in putting up a banner headline calling President Donald Trump Amnesty Don.
Whoa.
We had an interview yesterday with the president of the one of the largest conservative Republican hardline immigration groups, FAIR, and he said that this administration would lose all credibility if it went back on these promises it has made in regards to DACA, in regards to immigration, in regards to this wall. So this is what we call a problem right now, because the president came back out this morning with a series of tweets saying that he had not reached a deal and that there would be a wall. The problem is he released some other tweets that said, who would want to deport these people who are educated? It's a swing set.
Here's this one. We'll bring these
of
up.
A series of tweets.
Yeah.
If you don't like one tweet, you could move on to the next one and you might find something that you may like. And the problem with this is, where does this lead as far as the policy goes? Now, from one viewpoint, you could say, all right, well, they've reached some sort of a framework on what they're going to do about DACA, and they'll deal with the wall separately. However, that's not what Nancy Pelosi and Schumer said last night. They were pretty clear in the fact that they were saying there was not going to be a wall, that there would in fact be this kind of exchange, more border security for no wall. Obviously, the president today, he has Twitter at his disposal, but he's kind of tasked with the trip to Florida today.
Right, which we were showing you guys. We actually have that here.
To deal with Hurricane Irma.
Still a little bit of raw video there.
That's the press pool.
Yep. Vice President is there too.
Which is a little unusual, I will tell you, because normally, only on very rare occasions, will the president and the vice president travel together. Like this.
I was noticing that too.
Normally, outside of official White House functions, the president, the vice president normally will have separate schedules. There's a couple of reasons for that. There's a security component to it, and there's also the fact that you can, kind of double your money there. If you're trying to advance your agenda, you can have the vice president
somewhere else,
taking
doing something.
care of one set of responsibilities and the president taking care of another set of responsibilities. Clearly they have determined that the scope of what has gone on, not only you kind of look at them now as one response. Clearly what went on with Hurricane Harvey in Texas is not over yet, and only really just beginning in a lot of ways. Now coupled back to back with Irma, this is a quarter of the United States basically that has been affected by this.
Yeah, good point.
So the president and the vice president teaming up today to highlight the areas of concern and how they're going to respond to this through the administration today.
Yeah.
So we're standing by for Paul Ryan.
Stand by for Paul Ryan.
He's coming out at noon.
Nancy
Pelosi. He's got a chart there.
Yeah, there's a chart actually. Yeah, good observation there. And Nancy Pelosi had her.
Wasn't that good of an observation?
I couldn't see it. It was small.
You can see the chart.
It was a small little feed.
I don't try to take credit for things. I don't deserve credit.
He doesn't deserve credit. Don't give him credit.
But there is a chart there.
Yeah, I saw his
and the reason there's a chart there is because Paul Ryan, that chart is not going to talk probably about DACA. That chart's not going to talk about the wall. That chart's going to talk about their economic agenda, their tax cut, what they want to do moving forward. Paul Ryan can't get to those things if he's constantly trying to climb over these hurdles or this other stuff that gets plopped in his lap. Yesterday and the other day, Ryan had made it very clear he had a meeting yesterday with Pelosi and Schumer before they went off to this dinner. And Ryan has said repeatedly that I want tougher border security as part of this. He did not say any of this thing that the Democrats said last time when they came into the meeting. There's going to be no wall. So when he comes out, he's, I expect, initially going to talk about the Republican agenda that he wants to advance, that he's trying to advance, and then
he'll get questioned.
We'll see questions come almost immediately about what the heck happened at the White House last night. What does this mean? And whether or not he's now got a revolt going on his right of Paul Ryan. Remember, there was a tweet. I want to pull this up.
Yeah, find it. I can find it. Yeah, sure.
Because this was a bit of a barn burner. Steve King is one of the leaders of the conservative movement in the United States Congress. There he is, right there.
Top.
Yeah. And
what's his recent?
Look at what he tweeted.
This one?
Morning. Yeah.
5 hours ago. All right, let's take this.
There's only one word for this. This is an attack on the president. Reagan led with amnesty 1986. Bush 43 led with amnesty 06. Obama led with amnesty 13. All failed. Trump leads with DACA amnesty 2017. Those are his friends. These are Republicans saying these things, and these are Republicans on the right. Paul Ryan put down what I would say a low-grade challenge last week to his speakership. There was some talk about whether or not Newt Gingrich would possibly be drafted to come in as speaker. Rick Santorum's name was floated for this.
Yeah.
You don't have to actually be in Congress to be speaker. That's a little known quirk of the way the House works. It usually never does happen, but it's possible. Ryan apparently was able to kind of put that down fairly quickly, and it didn't really kind of boil over. However, when you've got people on the right saying things like this, it respins that wheel. And the tweets this morning out of the president doesn't really clarify much. You can kind of look at it like a kaleidoscope and see what you want to see. If you want to see a president who is about to pivot on a major controversial issue, you could see that. If you also want to see a president who was going to stick to his guns and do what he said, well, there's tweets there that support that as well too.
Right.
Trying
to find some more.
The wall one right there.
There.
Third from the top. Yeah, look at that.
This wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw this
So
one.
this is what he says. The wall. This is one that you could look at and say, okay, well, he's going to stick to his guns.
Right.
The wall, which is already under construction in the form of new renovations and old or existing fences and walls, will continue to be built. So right there, he's capitalized wall. He's talking about the fact that he is going to move forward with this. He doubles down on the fact that this is going forward.
Oh, and here's Paul Ryan.
Okay, well,
I think.
Buckle your seatbelts for
Here we
this, 'cause
go.
this could be a good one.
Let's listen in.
You know what? This is a big day. This is a big day in the House of Representatives. Today, the People's House passed all 12 funding bills on time. Let me just say that again. The reason you see these men and women up here is we passed all of 12 of our appropriation bills on time. This is the first time the House has done that since 2009. We've done our job for the people, but more importantly, we did our job the right way. We did it through regular order. We moved these bills through subcommittee. We moved these bills through full committee. We had an enormous amendment process on the floor, and we achieved conservative victories for the president's agenda for our agenda. We raised the pay for the servicemen and women. We strengthened our border protections. We defunded Planned Parenthood, and we used our majority to get this done. We set out to see if we could get all 12 bills through the House, taking a conservative approach, and we succeeded. Of course, we've got still a lot of work to do, and we need the Senate to work with us to get these bills on the president's desk. But this is a proud day for our majority, because this is what the people sent us here to do. I want to thank Chairman Frelinghuysen, and I want to thank all of our subcommittee chairs here. These men and women have done a tremendous job getting the work done on the people's business, making the House work the way it was intended to work, getting our bills done, doing it on time. It's been a long time in coming, and I'm just so proud of these men and women for all the hard work that they have done and for the great victories that this majority has been able to produce by passing all 12 bills ahead of schedule. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chairman Frelinghuysen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership. You've empowered the Appropriations Committee to continue its historical work for regular order. And I want to credit those who provided the deliverables today. It's a 12-bill package, but we did it in two parts, 4 bills and then 8 bills. My committee chairs, most of whom are behind me, did an incredible job delivering on defense, living on homeland security, making sure that we have the necessary means to do good things with the Department of Health and Human Services, the NIH. We have an incredible group of committed individuals, and I'm very proud to represent them and speak highly of them. Without your leadership, Mr. Speaker, and support of our committee, our work, we were able to get it done and through the caucus. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Have you asked the president to at least check with you before he makes an agreement with Democrats?
First off, there is no agreement. The president and the chief of staff called me from Air Force One today to discuss what was discussed. And it was a discussion, not an agreement or a negotiation. Let me say a couple of things. And I'll say the same thing I've been saying for weeks. And the president and I have been talking about this for weeks. You cannot fix DACA without fixing the root cause of our problem. We do not have control of our borders. So we need border security and enforcement as part of any agreement. I think that's something the Democrats are beginning to understand. I think that's something that they're beginning to agree with. I said as much to our Democratic colleagues here in the House just yesterday. But we have not begun negotiations. What we're doing is talking with ourselves here in our majority to make sure that we are all on the same page ourselves before we proceed on all of these things. And it's right and proper that the president talks with the other party. These were discussions, not negotiations. There isn't an agreement. And it's very clear, and I want to make this clear over and over again. If we don't fix the problems we have with border security and enforcement, and we would only fix DACA, we're going to have another DACA problem a decade from now. That's the symptom of the problem. So let's fix both. And I think people are beginning to understand that our position has not changed. It is going to stay the same. And more importantly, I think people understand this. It's totally common sense. It makes perfect sense. Fix the root cause of the problem while you're addressing the symptom of the problem. And I believe that Democrats are understanding that as well. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, Peter Pelosi and Leader Schumer came away thinking that the DREAM Act was the baseline for the DACA protection part of the bill. And the president said that there would be no citizenship, so we're all a little bit confused here.
That's why this was not a negotiation. These are discussions, understanding people's positions.
My question is twofold. First, did the president shed any light on what his preferences would be? And also, do you think something like the DREAM Act would you support that, or would your conference support that?
What I'm going to do is negotiate with colleagues. What I'm going to do is get consensus with our members. And no offense, Phil, but I'm not going to negotiate through the media. That is not in our interest. That is not how legislation is drafted. So what we're going to do is get our consensus, and we're having the conversations with our members right now while we negotiate a compromise, which there will be a compromise. We believe this will occur. And this compromise will include border security and enforcement so that we don't wind up with another DACA problem 10 years down the road. Yeah.
Saying that this is something that's going to be really hard for the base to accept. It's going to look like amnesty, even if it's
Look,
and how it seems like the raise action is being met.
anytime you see deadlines can help. And the president, I believe, did the right thing when he rescinded what we believe is an unconstitutional executive order, but also giving Congress time to come up with a solution. And this gives us the opportunity to address one of the fundamental root cause problems that the president campaigned on, that we all have been talking about, which is getting operational control of our border, making sure that we get border security and enforcement so that we can actually solve some of the problems that we are facing in this country. And so I see that kind of a solution, one that will be advancing that has the president's support, as something that our party will get behind, because we will do this in conjunction with the president. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, under your predecessor, House Republicans as a whole came up with an approach to immigration that was a step-by-step and one piecemeal approach where you guys would do the border security and enforcement measures before anything had to do with legal status. A lot of your colleagues today are still saying that they prefer such an approach. Do you think this will all be done in one bill, or are you open to moving the border pieces prior to?
Again, we're going to negotiate with our colleagues and not through the media on the way, shape, and form of how this does occur. But it's very clear to us, and I'll just say this: this is a bottom line issue, and I think the Democrats agree. They basically agreed yesterday. They know that getting operational control of our border is essential. They know that getting the proper kind of enforcement is essential, and they know that that is necessary for us to be able to find a compromise. Does anybody have any questions about the appropriations process? Not a single. Do you? Sure. Oh, yeah. Of course. Corey, go ahead. Yeah.
So, if President Trump and the Democrats do
Told you
with
guys.
a negotiated deal, are you prepared to put the package that the president negotiated with Democrats on the floor?
The president wasn't negotiating a deal last night. The president was talking with Democratic leaders to get their perspectives. Oh, I think the president understands that he's going to have to work with the congressional majorities to get any kind of legislative solution. Way in the back. Yeah. I will say what I've been saying all along as well, which is we're not going to bring a solution to the floor that does not have the support of President Trump. And if we had the support of President Trump on the kinds of things I just said, getting security and enforcement along with the solution here, that I believe will get a majority of our members because our members support President Trump. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, Fitz, what say you?
That was quick.
It was. He got a little aggravated at the end.
Well, no, he's smiling on his way out.
He was
and
laughing.
Paul Ryan is a grown-up, and he knows what he was walking into there today. He wanted to come out, and he wanted to talk about the fact that they were able to pass a dozen appropriation bills today, which is no small deal. You need these things in order for the government to run. However, as you just saw from that briefing and what we just talked about before it started, nobody wants to talk about that in the press today. They are all wanting to talk about President Trump, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and this dinner that went on last night, and whether or not, as Chuck and Nancy, as we now call them, do have this deal, this framework of a deal in place, or as President Trump was saying on Twitter this morning, that there is no deal in place. Now, we did hear a couple of things from Speaker Ryan today. He says he has spoken with President Trump this morning. He said they had a phone call. We just learned this, that they had a phone call from Air Force One as the president was en route to Florida this morning.
There he is, right there, live
And
in Naples,
there
guys.
he is.
Camera's a little
Looks like he's
off,
at
in and out, but
well, that's
he's at
live view.
live view is. This looks like he's at a food
And there's a press
gathering.
person or somebody telling everybody to get out of there.
Yeah. So the vice president's with him, like we noted before, sort of a rare thing to see them together for security
there's the
reasons
First
and
Lady
others.
there. Looks like they're going to be doing some kind of lunch or food service here.
Now, I also want to know, we rolled on Nancy Pelosi's weekly address as well. I actually didn't get a chance to watch it, so I was
Yeah.
thinking about playing that out later if we have time, if we want to.
Well,
but
if
I don't know what she
it's possible to
said.
take this live later on, if you can pull this up once they get started. It's really been remarkable to watch, even in Texas, and it's going on right now.
Mhm.
These folks who have been so, she's got her cell phone out. She's,
Yeah, I would do the same thing.
Having been through hell and back on these hurricanes, people really seem to be happy to meet the president.
Yeah.
Despite all of the turmoil that we have in our country, politically and socially and otherwise, Donald Trump himself has been a fixture on the national stage for close to, more than 30 years, 35 years now, probably. So
yeah, he's
to be
known
able
for a
to
lot
get
of things.
when you're in the midst of something like that, to have the president of the United States, somebody, a lot of these folks have probably spent the better part of 35 years, seeing in television and a couple of movies and all kinds of
entertainment.
things like that. So it does have the effect of lifting people's spirits, even though it might not change anything that's dramatically going on in their lives at the moment. But it does kind of at least let you know that the eyes of the world are upon you when the president of the United States is there.
Absolutely. What was he in Home Alone? Wasn't he in that movie?
He was in Home Alone 2.
2. Sorry.
Because
I messed that up. I should know. That's
Kevin
my
McCarthy over
childhood.
here, that's one of his
I
most
know.
famous acting roles.
I knew it was one of them, but I didn't know it was 2.
Kevin got lost in the plaza. I don't mean Kevin McCarthy.
Oh,
Kevin
the
in
kid.
Home Alone 2.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump offers to help him out.
That's right. He's
in
like,
their
hey,
counter
kid.
in the library. You should go to the plaza. It's one of the most beautiful hotels in New York City.
It
It's a wonderful
is.
place.
Yeah. Well,
now
there he is.
Okay, now I don't. So the president's got rubber gloves on, and he's serving food, and he's meeting all these people. I think probably a lot more people are excited to meet the president than they are to, have. And the vice president's right next to him there.
Yeah, there he is, Vice President Pence.
That's not a scene you often see. The
Right.
president of the United States next to each other. Like
Yep. They're both down there today. They flew from Joint Base Andrews to Fort Myers and now in Naples.
Yeah.
But I always like to also quickly chat about what you're working on today. You have a kind of an interesting story.
We do. We're going to be. I'm going to flesh it out a little bit more as we work on it today.
Okay.
But we're going to be looking at the new iPhone, specifically the new iPhone X. There were some security changes that were announced on Tuesday when Tim Cook was in the new Apple headquarters. Did you get a look at that place, by the way?
I saw it at the live event that they were doing.
It's
I watched
incredible.
it. It is. It's
yeah,
cool.
I remember when Steve Jobs had announced that before he passed away.
Yeah.
And you looked at the thing and you go, "Oh, that's crazy. They're never going to build that. It looks like a
Right.
spaceship." And they built it, and it is gorgeous. And they announced this in the new Steve Jobs Theater on Tuesday. But the issue is facial recognition. They have a technology now in the iPhone X that instead of using your thumbprint the way you do on, what do I have?
The
here?
older one.
I have an iPhone 2. What is this? I don't know what this
I don't even know. I will say.
6. I have a 6.
Okay.
So, the way it works right now on the iPhone 6 is you put, or the 7, you put your thumbprint on it. It recognizes your thumbprint, and then you unlock your phone. The way it's going to work now on the iPhone 10, facial recognition. It'll scan your face. Now, I'm told from the presentation that was made, it doesn't matter if you're wearing glasses.
I saw that.
It doesn't matter if you're wearing a hat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you grow a beard, if you change your hair color, if you have makeup on, if you don't have makeup on. That the technology in it is so advanced that the algorithms and the artificial intelligence built into it will be able to recognize you whether or not you slightly change your appearance. Now, that creates some questions in 2 areas, law enforcement and privacy. In the law enforcement area, you look back at the San Bernardino shooting, where an ISIS-inspired killer
That's right.
was able to get into an office space and kill, a dozen people. The FBI had terrible problems getting into the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone. They were not able to unlock it. There was a bit of a give and take between the companies and the FBI about whether or not they could unlock it.
Did he have special security things on it? It was
password.
Really?
A password. One of the things we learned about that was that the cell phone companies insisted that they do not store passwords, that your password is the domain on your phone, and that is where it lives. FBI ultimately was able to access that information on the phone. However, it raised a lot of questions and it opened a lot of eyes into the difficulty that law enforcement has when they're trying to access information off of a cell phone. Well, you fast forward that to now, where Apple has now come up with the iPhone 10.
Same as the iPhone X.
And it's going to be working off of facial recognition. We're told one of the ways this works is it's depth perception on contours and features of the face. However, how would a code-breaking encryption program be able to crack that? It raises a lot of questions about how law enforcement is going to be able to make use of this data in the event of a law enforcement investigation that they need to get data off of. Now, the flip side of that coin is privacy. There are already, and this has only been 2 days since this was announced, questions being asked about this facial recognition technology. Senator Al Franken from Minnesota has already posed some questions. Where is this data going to be stored? Can this facial recognition data be sold? And how is Apple and other companies that are going to probably roll this out? Because we know once there is a leap in this, everybody usually follows suit in this industry.
Totally.
How are they going to secure this information and make sure that this doesn't wind up, either on the dark web, up for sale? If this is rolled out to other forms of security and somebody has the biometrics of your face, what could they do with that? I don't know if there's any hard answers to any of this right now, but it sure raises a lot of questions.
It's so interesting as technology evolves, how it links back up with privacy and security and law enforcement, because they're all equally important, but also is the advancement of technology.
Well, remember when it was just a pin?
Yeah.
All you had to worry about was
I still use that, but like sometimes. I mean, and other things, but it's so interesting, especially in our generations, to see the
look at this.
The future. Yeah, I hadn't seen some devastation. This is
looks like a mobile home park down in Florida where they're
so I guess that's where they are.
President is.
Yeah.
You could see they're just tossed about.
Oh yeah, a lot of damage. I hadn't seen it on the camera. If you guys are just joining the stream, welcome. Feel free to chat with us in the live stream chat, and we're going to be jumping around on our different live feeds for today. Fitz joining us as always, talking about the politics of the day and his story for today, which is cool.
Those are the pool vehicles for the White House press pool that's traveling with the president today, and also I got both schedules from the vice president and the president. I imagine at some point they are going to try to double down on their availabilities, and the president and the vice president will be off on some different things.
Yeah, they are. President Trump comes back.
So Vice President has traveled on Air Force 2.
Yeah.
So they've traveled on separate aircraft today, and then he's going to be going to.
He'll come back to join Bay Sanders, but they're staying in Florida for the day.
Right.
But let's quickly talk about conservative commentator Ben Shapiro making an appearance at UC Berkeley tonight. Speaking of California and Apple. Some local breaking news that we got going on with Metro.
Really good. Okay.
I'm hearing it. Okay, we got a live view coming out. Berkeley.
I missed what you were saying.
We were Berkeley. I'm trying to relate the California topics.
Berkeley,
Ben Shapiro,
California. All right.
It's a big controversy.
They're supposed to have a free speech week. Okay.
Berkeley says they're bracing for chaos tonight.
Well, and with good reason, because there's been chaos out there before. Milo Yiannopoulos, a very controversial, very fiery conservative commentator of the alt-right, tried to make a speech there several months ago. There's no other way to call it. It wasn't rioting. It wasn't protesting. It was rioting. People were breaking windows. Antifa groups, Black Bloc, they were trashing parts of that campus, parts of that area, because they did not want him to speak at Berkeley. They ultimately wound up canceling that appearance. Laura Ingraham ran into similar opposition for trying to appear at Berkeley. Now we understand Steve Bannon may be joining this appearance.
Really?
And Ben Shapiro is supposed to be there now. The problem here is that Berkeley now has a very concrete reputation of violence when conservative commentators who protesters do not agree with appear on campus. It's no secret that in California, that has been a hotbed of that kind of activity. However, it's a volatile mix when you declare you are going to have a free speech event and they could possibly be shut down by groups of violent protesters who have decided they do not agree with the First Amendment rights of the people who are going to be speaking. So it is going to be very tense out there.
I wonder, do we think it's going to happen? I mean, is it going to go on tonight? We have to see.
We will see.
Yeah, it's slated for tonight. He's
I
supposed
will
to be
tell
speaking.
you, it is very much in the interest of Berkeley University at this point to make sure that it does go on.
Yeah.
Because, time and time again, they have professed to be interested in free speech and to
then
be
canceled.
Purveyors of free speech, only to have those events shut down because of these violent groups, Black Box and Antifa. At some point in this country, we are going to probably have to get to the point where we talk or listen to people we disagree with, and that goes for both sides. Because the First Amendment, as I've read it, does not say it applies to only people who agree with you. It also applies to people who disagree with you. And then in the middle of your conversation, that is where you try to reach some kind of agreement. This area that we've fallen into now, where opposition speech is just shut down automatically, is a dangerous thing in a country that professes to be a country of free speech.
Yeah.
Especially in the fact that, a place like UC Berkeley, they keep telling people that they're going to allow free speech, that they are going to
be both neutral
bring in
on that.
opposite opinions, and then they get shut down.
And Coulter was one of them? Was she shut down there? Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have to see if they're able to do this.
Yeah.
But it will not be surprising to anybody if they are met with opposition in the streets about this, because those groups have made it very clear that they are diametrically opposed to these people and do not want them to appear at the university and saying the things that they said.
Yeah, the city is taking steps to obviously prepare for this, and police are ramping up, and it'll go on. We'll see what happens tonight.
All right.
In California. All right.
We're gonna have to go.
Fitz, thank you so much. As always, it's awesome to have him in here, giving us a little rundown. We're gonna jump around with some more live stuff that's going on, but we'll see him again.
Okay.
Have a great one. I like your New Jersey mug. Always repping.
Stone Pony. There's a story behind this that I will tell you.
I want to know it. All right, we'll save it.
There's not enough time.
We'll save it.
I'll tell you the story some other time. All right.
Hey, Joe.
Talk to you later.
All right, bye, Fitz. Rolling out, guys. Okay. So, like I said, we're going to be covering a bunch of different things, including, you may see this on the headline right here on the YouTube stream. I'm talking about the local Montgomery County boyfriend who was arrested. There you go. Take it out. Who was arrested and is facing charges in the murder of his pregnant girlfriend, 31-year-old Laura Wallen. We've been reporting on this all morning. And our Bob Barnard, reporter, is in the newsroom. I'm going to grab him in a second to chat about this, because he was covering it this morning, and there is just a lot of drama behind this case, and it's really a big tragedy. And we're going to show you more on that in a second. But for now, let's go back to Capitol Hill with another live event on the Hill. More information on that coming to you in a second.
making sure our kids are prepared as the next generation to succeed in school and beyond. And I am ready to keep that work on now to make that a reality, and I'm very happy to have so many people here by my side. This bill is not only the right thing to do for working families and the economy, it is a smart investment in our children and in their future. So I'm delighted to be here today to introduce this, and I will turn it over to my friend who's been a partner on all these issues, Representative Bobby Scott.
Thank you. Watch out, Bobby. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Murray, and thank everyone for being here today. There's already a bipartisan consensus that our nation's children must be able to access affordable, high-quality child care and other early learning opportunities in order to fulfill their potential and succeed in college and career. In fact, a recent poll done by the First 5 Years Fund found that 89% of voters, including 82% of Republicans, support making quality early childhood education more affordable for working families. Currently, the average annual cost for child care in my state of Virginia is higher than the cost to attend higher education. Sadly, Virginia is not unique. It's one of 33 states in which child care costs more than college. In Virginia and elsewhere, lower middle-income families are forced to pay as much as 30% of their annual income on child care, and many of the lowest income families are just unable to afford child care at all. This is why I'm pleased to join Senator Murray, Leader Pelosi, Leader Schumer, and my other colleagues here to introduce the Child Care for Working Families Act. Child Care for Working Families Act is a bold solution to fix this national problem. The bill will guarantee universal access to quality early childhood programs for all families making less than 130% of their state's median income. For other working families, the legislation would mean that no family of four with an annual income below $139,000 a year would pay more than 7% of that income for quality child care. This legislation would also ensure that early learning teachers and caregivers finally get the time, attention, training, and resources they deserve. Whether child care, preschool, pre-kindergarten, or other learning environment, every child should receive quality care. Parents deserve peace of mind that comes with the confidence of knowing that child care and early learning professionals are well-trained and well-paid. And so no longer should a full-time early learning professional have to enroll in public assistance in order to make ends meet. Decades of research has shown that properly nurturing children in the early years of life is instrumental in supporting enhanced brain development, cognitive functioning, and emotional and physical health. Research shows that quality early learning helps prevent and mitigate academic achievement gaps, provides indisputable long-term benefits to our nation, such as better education, stronger earnings, and lower crime rates. The Treasury, also benefits because studies have shown that $7 in economic benefits are achieved for every dollar invested in child care. This bill is not only the right thing to do, but as Senator Murray said, it's the smart thing to do. The Child Care for Working Families Act lays out a path for what early learning in America should look like. If we want parents to work, if we want our children to have a better future, if we want strong and stable families, we must ensure that all families have access to quality early learning opportunities. Quality child care is a national priority, and that's why I'm proud to be introducing this bill today. It is now my pleasure to introduce the distinguished senator from Pennsylvania, a strong supporter of children and families, Senator Bob Casey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Like all of us, we're honored to be here, especially with some special guests. This is a day to talk about children, of course, but also to talk about their parents. And when we focus on the child, of course, we want every child to be able to be given the opportunity to learn more when they're very young and to earn more when they're in our workforce. One of the most important ways to do that is to make sure that every opportunity for childcare is also an opportunity to learn. That's why we often refer to it not just as quality childcare, but circumstances and settings where there's early care and early learning at the same time. We've got to make that investment. The only way that can happen is if parents can afford it. You heard from Senator Murray and Representative Scott about the cost, that this can cost more than a college tuition at a four-year public institution. So here's what we're aiming to do. Here's the basic goal. We want to make sure that no family under 150% of the state median income pays more than 7% of their income on child care. Give you an example, in Pennsylvania, the median household income is $53,000, 599 bucks, right? Do the math. A family could be making over $80,000 in benefit from this legislation. This is the right thing to do for the child. This is the right thing to do for their parents. It's the right thing to do to continue to raise wages, build the middle class for that parent, but also for the child in the future. So in the interest of time, it is my honor to introduce the Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Bobby Casey. I would first like to announce that I'm in love with Alice. Isn't that a song, I'm in love with Alice? And would also like to announce the one thing missing in my life is grandchildren. Hint, hint. Hear that, Jessica and Shappy? Okay, great to be here. I want to thank Senator Murray and Congressman Scott for their great leadership in developing this plan. We knew when Nancy and I knew when we were working on the better deal with all of our friends, we needed something good on child care. We couldn't quite figure out the best thing to do. And lo and behold, Patty and Bobby, with great thinking and so much energy, came out with just the right plan. And we're so proud to be supporters and it is part of our better deal. And look, we all know this. Too many Americans, old and young, think that the system is rigged against them and no one has their back. Take-home pay is too low. Everyday costs are too high. It's a struggle to get ahead. Democrats believe that Americans deserve a better deal, so this country works for everyone again, not just the elites and not just the special interests. So we've been focused like a laser on helping the middle class and those fighting to get there. And today, we're offering a better deal to American families when it comes to caring for their wonderful little children. In my home state of New York and in many states across the country, quality child care, especially when you have more than one child, can often cost more than the take-home pay of one parent, or more than the rent. This is not just acceptable. According to a new report from Care.com, the majority of American households spend more than 10% of their total income on child care. A fifth of all households in America spend more than a quarter of their income on child care. The world has changed. When I was a kid, my family was typical. My dad worked, my mom stayed home and raised the kids. There was no need for child care. Today, the majority of families are either single-parent families or families where both parents work. Child care is a necessity, but it is so expensive that just like college tuition, it has families up late at night worrying, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay? And so what it does is it forces far too many parents, it forces far too many parents to choose between going to work and paying for child care, and that is not right. American families shouldn't have to break the bank, sacrifice their careers, or forfeit savings for the future so their kids can have access to high-quality learning and care that will put them on a path to success. We also know that early learning from birth to age 4 is critical for our young children. This is the time in their lives most important for cognitive development. It's an investment we're making here. Not just making people's lives easier, not just making sure they can afford it, but it's investment in our kids. Almost as important as the milk they drink. That was not in my notes. I thought it up all by myself.
Wow. Just wait till she finishes that.
So instead of helping the 1% in this country with a new child care tax cut, as some in the Trump administration are pushing, Democrats are offering a better deal on the high cost of child care for working families, the families in the middle, and those trying to get to the middle, who need it the most. First, we're offering a better deal for American families so that no family under 150% of state median income pays more than 7% of their income on child care. Second, we're going to double the number of children eligible for child care assistance in America. And third, we'll increase pay for child care professionals who care for our children. Finally, we'll ensure that low and moderate income 3- and 4-year-olds have access to high-quality pre-K to help prepare them for success in kindergarten and beyond. So whether it's by making childcare more affordable, cracking down on monopolies, creating millions of good-paying jobs through infrastructure, raising wages, or fighting back against corporations that outsource American jobs and countries that manipulate trade laws, Democrats are committed to a better deal for middle-class Americans, not the special interests, not the 1%, because we want to help those in the middle and those trying to get to the middle to get ahead. Leader Pelosi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us acknowledge the greatness of our Senate Democratic leader in his rehearsal for grandparents.
Good. That wasn't in her notes either.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, for your leadership on this subject and as it part of our better deal. Part of it is better jobs, better pay, better future. And the better future part of it is about not only increasing income to families, but lowering cost to them and equipping the families for the tools for the future. Lowering cost of child
All right, guys, if you are just joining us, you're looking at a live camera here of President Trump and the Vice President Pence and their trip to Florida. It's sort of a raw, choppy video here, but we're going to be switching topics in just a second here to talk about what you may have come to this stream for, which is the local case involving a man from Maryland who was arrested and now faces charges in the murder of his 31-year-old pregnant girlfriend. And actually, we're just going to be joined by Bob Barnard, who was talking about this morning on our air. Thanks, Bob, grabbing the mic. Yes, he's sitting down with us now, this is really the reason, this is the headline that we put on our stream today, because it's definitely dominating our news today, this morning. So many different angles about this, and it's just crazy. So we can sort of start from the beginning, or just kind of talk about what we know and like what happened this morning. So Bob, you were out there talking about, basically the arrest has been made, and I actually have a picture, I'm going to bring it up, of there he is, the guy on the left. We're going to bring this
apparently
here.
Been living with someone else for a number of years.
Exactly.
Had a who apparently is a teacher herself.
Oh wow, so a lot of similarities.
Yeah, and then had obviously spent time with Laura. We started our day off at her home. She has a townhouse up in Olney.
Mm-hmm.
And there are flowers out front,
Really?
balloons and notes on the door.
That's the
where
woman
she
you
was-
see.
Yeah,
Mhm.
where Laura last lived, or where she lived and was last seen basically on
Mhm.
Labor Day. And then we spoke to a neighbor who said she was very nice, invited her over for a glass of wine. When this other neighbor, a nurse, first moved into the neighborhood and was shocked by what had happened and the developments in the case where they arrest the boyfriend. And he had been at this news conference on Monday.
Right, which we have a clip of, we'll show you.
Yeah, at police headquarters in Gaithersburg, and now he's the one that they arrest. Then from there, we went up to Wild Lake High School, where Laura was a social studies teacher the last several years. Met with the superintendent of schools, talking about the grief counselors that were there from other schools came in to talk to the students
Oh, really?
today. Because the students had planned a vigil last night, praying for her safe return,
Oh, my
and then
goodness.
before the vigil, they learned that she was found. So a lot of kids still went to the school to kind of console each other and are back in school today. Although we heard from one of the grief counselors who was brought in from one of the other high schools in Howard County that a lot of kids did not go to school today. A lot of the kids
Really?
who were either her students or knew her were upset by the story.
Right.
So a lot of kids didn't go to school today, but those that did were getting grief counseling. And we spoke to a guy named Jesse Moore, who was super nice and
Yeah, I saw
had
that.
done some of the grief counseling today, and said kids were calm at school, but just, shocked and
I'm
devastated
sure.
by how it all played out. Here she was pregnant. She was super great, friendly teacher. I think excited about being pregnant, going to be a mom.
Yeah.
And then this happens. And so not only is she missing, and she's found dead.
Yeah.
And then they end up charging the boyfriend, who may or may not be the father of the child.
I was wondering about that. We have not determined
I mean,
if
I
that's
think they've been
they
saying,
think they've been saying it.
People have been saying that, but who knows for sure?
Right.
I don't know for a fact that he's the father of the child, but that's the understanding we have. But it's okay. So here's this man she was super obviously close to that was going to help bring in this new child to the world, and now he's charged.
We know that
And at this hour going to court. He's making his
Oh,
first
that's
court
right.
appearance in Rockville right now.
What is it? 1? Yeah, it's 1 o'clock right now. So
just an awful story all the way around.
It really is. I mean, people were saying it's sort of reminiscent of the Lacey Peterson case in California with Scott Peterson. Those details kind of lost in my memory here, but I do remember it was quite similar. Pregnant, wife at the time. I can't remember if she was fiance or wife. But this case, the similarities in his, there he is in the left corner of your screen. The similarities in his, his fiance. It's similar to this woman that was the girlfriend. That was we're finding out.
Yeah.
In some ways, teacher, similar age.
Yeah, it's a mess, and here he is. I mean, we learned last night that apparently they had suspected him all along, and people always, the professionals and then the amateur sleuths, got to figure, it's got to be the boyfriend or the husband, someone, or the wife or the girlfriend, someone close to the person who's missing and ends up dead. But in this case, I think the authorities suspected him early on because Laura had sent text messages saying, Tyler's taking me to a weird field or whatever.
Isn't this crazy? So she actually was taken to this weird field.
And then took some and then I think it was the sister, not a friend, but a sister who was on the other end of the exchange, said, send me a picture. And apparently it's that same field in Damascus where her body was found. So here she was about to be murdered and buried. She's in touch with someone. And so right away, the authorities knew that it was Tyler who was there with her. And yet, they brought him along with the parents to this news conference at police headquarters on Monday under the guise of
That's this, right, that we have?
Yeah, under the guise of the family wants to offer a $25,000 reward for information that'll hopefully lead to her being found alive. And he's right there, the boyfriend, suspect, now charged, right there with them, holding hands,
right,
making a tearful plea.
And we're going to play that out actually now. I'm going to keep Bob here to comment on it, but check this out. This is when police knew that he was a suspect and had let the parents
We didn't know,
know.
but yeah.
We didn't. It's funny, the media
and here
was not aware.
And Chief Tom Manger, Montgomery County Police Chief, last night said, we wanted to see how he would act, kind of like putting him out there just to kind of a ploy to ultimately help nail him.
Now, you've covered some stuff like this, Bob. Does this happen a lot with law enforcement? Do they do this ploy to kind of catch someone?
There are some, they do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm racking. I have been since this morning racking my brain to try to come up with another case where, in a sense, they helped parade their suspect in front. It's happened before where you've interviewed someone at the scene of a crime. They've come on camera. And maybe even spoken to police. It turns out that's the son of a gun who did it.
Wow.
And out there like, I used to see her in the yard, or whatever. Or there have been other cases. I'm trying to think. There was one. I don't want to misstate the facts. I'm very careful what I say. But there was a case where someone went missing, I think near a supermarket, or worked at a supermarket, went missing, and a person close to that woman was out there, whether it was a boyfriend, husband, or whatever, kind of helping with the search and talking to the media and being with the police. Turns out that's the guy who did it. So.
Wow.
But where it's actually orchestrated by the police with the cooperation of the family, hold hands, come out here, that's pretty unusual.
It is unusual. It's crazy, and we'll comment on that after we see this. So I'm just going to play this quick clip out. This was his statement, unbeknownst to him, that police had already had their eye on him. His statement to, I guess, the media and press on Monday.
Right, a week after she went missing.
Okay.
And long after she was dead.
So we'll play it out.
It's just a complete shock that I think leading up to the weekend that she's missing, I don't believe anybody has any inclination to think that something was wrong or just. I'm sorry?
Any of your last conversations with her?
I don't know where she is. That's all. I don't know. I know we're all trying to do everything we can to find her, and I just pray that she's safe. She comes back. That's all I care about right now.
How long have you all been together, and what's wrong? How are you concerned about me?
I'm sorry?
How long have you all been together, and how long have you all been planning, or how did you feel about the baby coming?
Laura and I have known each other probably for 10 years now. We've, any normal relationship, just take one step at a time, and you take the progress that comes with you. And been to doctor's meetings, we've been sonograms and all the prenatal care that you could ask, and sorry.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for your continued coverage and your assistance in this case.
Talk over it. All right, so if you notice right here, that was his statement to the press.
It's fascinating.
It is,
Fascinating.
and now we're finding out, obviously today this all came out, that they made this arrest. There he is, Tyler Tessier.
Yeah,
the
that's
boyfriend.
Paul Starks, who's captain. He's the public information officer, so he's right there with him.
Right, and the interesting thing here, something that people were analyzing was the body language, and then the parents of the woman, Laura, who were led on by the fact that he was a suspect, but they still sort of play out to to sort of let this investigation go as it should.
Oh yeah, and our Facebook page was
Yeah.
loaded with comments today. People saying, you could see in the mother's face that she was not happy. She, there was a little telltale on her face of like, this is the guy right here. Whereas the dad
Yeah.
did a better job maybe of
acting.
along. But people saying you got to believe that he was ready to, the dad probably had feelings like I'd like to kill this guy, but I'm going to do what I got to do because the police have asked us to kind of help. Not entrap him. I mean, they probably had enough evidence that they probably could have nailed him without doing that. But
Okay.
I mean,
we don't know.
For a, social science experiment, it's fascinating and it's pretty awesome that they did. They paraded him out there and had him do his thing. But I get the sense that they probably could have nailed him anyway. Because
Okay.
I don't know that he said anything that incriminated him.
In that moment.
No, but
right.
a lot of the reaction is like, oh, look at the fake tears. And, there's a little trembling in his voice. But you wonder, what's he thinking? Is he thinking, oh, my God, I'm talking to people, and I know she's dead. And
Right.
I mean, he's not been convicted or anything, but
Right.
he's only charged. But if they suspect all this evidence and information that they have is true and is true, then, oh, my God, he's knowing what's going on and talking about it like as if there's a chance she's alive. It's fascinating.
It is. And quick shot here to his mug shot from yesterday, right?
Yeah.
We'll put up a little thing here because you guys know what we're talking about, but you probably do. So Bob was covering a portion sort of the story this morning, talked to some of the school counselors. So she was a teacher, we'll go back to her here, of young kids or older kids?
High school.
It was
High school age social studies teacher.
Yeah.
Been there about 3, 4, 5 years in that range.
Yeah.
Had always wanted to work there. Apparently worked at a nearby middle school for a little bit and then got the job there. So she was a high school social studies teacher, 31 years old.
Yeah.
Lived in Olney, Maryland, taught up in Columbia, Maryland.
Okay. And I'm thinking, all I can think about is how smart was it of her to take that picture and also, there's so many questions still I have, but also, how do law enforcement put that together and know what field that is? That's crazy to me. I mean, it's wild that they can even do that.
I don't know if
Somehow
she
they
actually
narrowed it
described
down.
it somehow,
Maybe.
if she said, gosh, I think we're in Damascus or whatever. And,
Okay,
and
maybe
the
she
thing
was
is,
aware.
they could show all the police officers who either work in that part of Montgomery County or live up there and be like, oh, I know where that is. I can see that tower in the background, or that's this road here.
Right.
There are probably
That's
indications
true.
in the
There's
sign.
little things.
But yes, the fact that she had the wherewithal to reach out to a friend and that he didn't stop her. I mean, I
Right,
wonder.
because she had her phone.
Right, and if he's, and again, we don't know.
We're all
I mean,
speculating, we're
it's
thinking about
it's
it.
Well, and he's only charged. He's not been
There he is.
convicted, tried,
Right.
or anything. But if it was he there with her, as she is indicated in her text messaging, and if he ended up killing her, then it's like he knew what he was going to do, or pretty well suspected. That's why he took her to the field. So the fact that he let her text, I mean, you would think he'd be like, get that phone out of your hands. I don't want anybody knowing. But they could triangulate and figure out, oh, her phone was up there. But the fact that she had the wherewithal to, I'm going to send a message.
I know. Did she know? I mean, I wonder.
You wonder if she knew there was anything wrong at all. Or,
Right.
Or if, now I've heard some things like there had been some text messaging to her, not related to him specifically, personally, but that may have given her indication that he had someone else in his life. And
Okay.
that,
Oh, right, there's another relationship speculation.
Right, that wait a minute, I'm not the one and only kind of thing.
Yes.
There may have been some of that. So maybe she knew that this isn't cool,
Mhm.
but if she thought they were just going out for lunch or whatever, and all of a sudden they're in a field, to have that wherewithal to text message, I think it was her sister, a note saying, hey, something's not right, I'm going out to
Yeah.
a field and whatever, and then the other person on the other end saying, well, take a photo of where you
I
are.
can't
Let me see.
believe that.
I mean, to help set up the case in a sense against the man who's about to kill you.
I was
that's
about to
pretty
say,
awesome.
I was about to say to
Pretty
take
awesome.
and eerie and horribly tragic at the same time to take
She-
a picture of the place that you will later be
And
buried.
she totally, like in a sense, saved the police a lot of work and kind of
On
helped
her
to hand
own.
them
Isn't that
the
amazing?
case. Yeah,
And-
so
and-
I mean, she's a teacher, she's smart.
Yeah.
So the fact that she was able to, and with the help of
It's-
whether it was her sister or whoever on the other end of the text messaging to make this happen, it's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, and obviously
Awful, but cool.
It is, and not to trivialize it in any way, but it totally reminds me of like a TV show or a movie or a Sopranos scene, and that's exactly what I thought when I thought of taking one to a field. Now, a question we still have, we don't know, is the cause of death. Correct? We don't know any of that.
no. I
Which
mean-
who knows? I mean, right?
Either shot her, clobbered her,
strangled
her,
Both.
suffocated her, buried her.
Doing that just
So we don't. I mean,
And-
bottom line, it doesn't matter.
I
She's
guess so,
dead,
yeah.
and he
And her unborn baby.
tried to bury her. Yes.
The question of that too, 4 months. What will become of that? Will there be
Secondary
another
charge or
charge? I
whatever.
don't know.
There
I
isn't
don't know how
yet.
that goes.
I don't
yeah.
believe there is yet.
Okay.
There's like providing false statements to police because he misled them obviously
Right.
initially, but the murder charge is the main one. For some reason, I thought the charging document may have had a second murder, but I don't know if it was for the unborn baby. I don't know. But,
Okay.
but there's the
We'll find
potential
out
for
more.
that. But
So what will kind of take place today? And if I don't, Matt Acklin, our reporter, is covering this
Right.
today, the bond hearing. What exactly
up in
goes on with
Rockville,
that?
they'll just go in and I believe just talk briefly about like his
Really?
roots to the community. If they would even offer a bond, it would be very high, but they'll probably, I would almost guarantee you, say no bond.
Okay.
So it's basically just a kind of a first court appearance, a bond
Mm.
hearing. What do we do with this guy while we're putting the case together or waiting to take him to court?
Mm.
And so they'll probably say, look, no bond, he'll be held without bond, and they'll probably set a date for a preliminary hearing. Which,
right.
which
I think
then
we
would
saw
be
that come out maybe this morning.
yeah, which will at those first hearings beyond after today will be just to kind of briefly lay out the case to convince the judge, yeah, let's go forward with this
Mhm.
case, and then who knows, maybe he'll end up taking a plea. But then you involve like the family. Will they accept the plea if he'll make the plea only for a sentence of 30 years as opposed to life in prison? There's no death penalty in Maryland.
Oh, right.
So prosecutors say, look, this is horrible, premeditated, all that. We
Yep.
want you put away for life. And
What could
we're going to
happen?
take you to trial. He could say, well, look, I'll save you the trial and I'll plead guilty, but I want a chance to maybe someday get out of prison. So how about 30 years? Or he and his
Right.
attorneys will negotiate. And then I guess they will at some point involve the family.
The
and
parents
say, is
would
that
have a
okay
say
with you? Yeah, I think
a
so.
little bit?
I think so. I think that in many cases, in
Yeah.
different jurisdictions, they'll say, look, is this acceptable for you? And if the family's like, no, we want this guy to spend the rest of his life in prison without any chance of parole,
Yeah.
then they'll say, sorry, we're not. And then maybe the guy will say, well, I still don't want to go to trial. I'll plead guilty. There's negotiating that goes on.
Hmm. And I know we're in the DMV, so sometimes we cross borders, but everything happened in Maryland for this, right? This was
That's
in
right.
Damascus. She's from
She
Olney.
lived in Montgomery County, taught in Howard County. Her car was found in Howard County, but her body was found in Montgomery County.
There's Bob's little Chiron.
So yes, so there, it's all in Maryland,
Okay.
at least so far. 2 different jurisdictions, and I think you can get to. Well, she was found in Montgomery, so it's probably all a Montgomery County case,
Okay.
even though she taught in
In
Howard County and her
Howard
car was
County.
found there. If they don't believe she was transported, and county lines aren't as important as state lines. If she went over
Mm.
state lines or, U.S. borders, there might be different
Right.
jurisdictions involved, but this is pretty much going to be a Montgomery County case.
Was there any story around her car, or was it just sort of left somewhere and she went missing?
I think
is that what
he
happened?
took, the story is
Oh,
that
that's what he
he may
took.
have driven it to Columbia and taken the plates away.
Right, you guys reported that this morning.
yeah.
Meaning to kind of conceal it?
Knows? Who knows?
Or, and just taking a front plate, what does that exactly do?
It's
It's odd
that's
to
a
me.
mystery to me, and
And yeah, and then will there be any like mental health plea or anything? I mean, that always kind of comes up. I mean, will it maybe?
in my mind, you got to be crazy if you're going to kill someone. Whether even if you're in your straight mind,
Absolutely.
mostly you must have snapped or done something at the time. But they
Right.
might say, no, look, he held down a job. He had a long time romantic relationship with someone else, showing no signs of mental health issues.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
so it depends. I mean, it depends on what they find out about him.
And what's the status on that? The fiance or the other woman? Are we knocking on those doors? we don't know.
We are. I don't want to. I don't
We
know
don't have
enough
any
about
info.
that. I don't want to get into that at all. But
They're looking into it.
There was that he had someone else in his life. What, if any, role that played in this?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, he's the one that they've nailed. Whether any other person was involved, we just don't know. But
Mm.
apparently, he was not exclusively with Laura.
Right. And in that little press conference too, he mentions, and I actually hadn't heard that word before, but he talks about the sonogram and the pregnancy, so he knows she was pregnant. Again, I think unconfirmed if he's the father, but people are saying he was.
And did he, after the fact,
Yeah.
after she was allegedly, or after she was killed, after he allegedly was there, did he then use her cell phone pretending to be her to say, hey, I don't think it's Tyler's baby? There's that
There's that component that is running around.
Yeah, that's out there that that maybe when they say he used her phone, Was it
To
in order to
try to
make it
be
look
her.
like she was saying to someone,
Right.
oh, by the way,
It's not
really
his.
sure it's his, to kind of remove him from
backtrack.
the
It's
list
wow.
of suspicious people.
It is so
Yeah.
dramatic and horribly tragic at the same time.
And the fact that, she was in the presence of so many young people as a teacher over the last number of years, so that her death and the violent nature of it touches a lot of young lives who are just probably just old enough to realize, we see some of this stuff on TV, but it does happen in real life.
I was going to say, those prime formative years of high school, this having influenced that, I can't even imagine what some of those kids are going through, and then when they go off to college and all this stuff. But you were saying sort of young, I'm guessing social studies, young high schoolers, but we don't know.
It's probably 10th grade, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. But one of her former students who's at Townsend had put out a video that we showed on the air the other day. She was making kind of an appeal, had a little music to it. It was well done.
Really?
Praying for her former teacher to be
found,
to come home, whatever, if you've run away, or whatever the circumstance was at the time in their mind. So there are former students too. She's been a teacher for a number of years. So there are kids in college and maybe out of college who've had, she wasn't that old, only 31, but who had Miss Wallen. So beyond the Wild Lake High School community, there are other people who, have had to think about this and know what happened to someone they cared about.
I'm sure more of those students will come out, high schoolers and college students who have gone on from that high school to pay tribute to her. And we talked really quickly about body language of the parents. This was such a weird moment for them. I know on the morning show they were talking about, some of the people who are parents in the morning show, the anchors, could you do that if you knew you were involved, you have kids? I mean, how that is possible. I'm sure more will come out. I think we're knocking on the doors of the parents.
Well, it's
today.
weird because it wasn't necessarily. I think
we don't know how firmly.
And it wasn't like this was a stranger. I mean, if they said, "Look, this stranger we believe killed your child. Do you mind sitting next to him?" and you'd be like, "No." But here's someone who, like, you thought was going to, again, he is charged. He's not been convicted, but the man who's been charged was someone you thought was going to, was the father of your soon-to-be grandchild who was going to help raise your grandchild, and now they're telling you, we think this is the guy, and you probably in your heart maybe suspect it, because I think you always look at the closest people to the person that's missing or feared dead or whatever. So when they're telling you this, here's this not a stranger. This is someone you've known, who your daughter, I would imagine, said she loved and was going to be the father of her child. And that would be tough because, in some ways you're like, okay, we've been around this guy. We can be around him one more day to help nail him if that's what you suspect is going on here. But then wouldn't you also want to be like, no, if this is the person, and maybe they didn't know.
I was wondering how certain
murdered
they
and
were.
Right.
But we don't know. Well, that'll come out.
And the fact that this guy, if they thought could have killed her and buried her or done something with the body, that would be very hard.
Absolutely.
To sit calmly next to, stand calmly next to.
Right. It's so
and yet,
violent.
if you look at the mom's face,
I know.
You see it more there than with the dad's.
I think so too. We're talking about that too, sort of the act they had to put on.
I don't know. I guess it's a individual case thing, and also the circumstance.
How much do they know?
And if they were like, look, we can't nail this guy unless you help us, then you're going to probably help you.
Right.
Help the police because you want to nail this guy. Or if they're like, we just want to see what he would say, and the fact that they were hoping to arrest him wasn't dependent on your participation. Maybe you'd be like, no, I'm not going to stand next to this guy.
Right.
Figure it out yourself. But I don't know.
And then looking back, I was trying to kind of see what I believed. We're going to play out after Bob goes off to do his other stuff. The press conference from the police last night. Tom Manger giving the update.
And he spells out. You'll hear that we did this to see what he would say with the cooperation of the family.
He reveals what their plan was. And then, so we were following this really from the beginning. We knew she went missing on Labor Day, or we knew about it Labor Day. And then that week, were you covering any of that? Were you kind of watching the case?
I did. Really. Well, I was watching it. I didn't cover it. No.
I was curious what you thought this would end up like this. I mean, how?
It's hard because sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Sometimes it's like the person, and until you know more of the story. Sometimes these people just, want to get away for a little bit. They just kind of want to. But then we heard maybe she left lights on and her pet behind.
There were things that came out.
You're like, okay, if you're leaving your pet behind and your lights on, maybe that's not like tidying things up and I'm going to go away for a week.
Mhm.
You take care of my dog.
Mhm.
Sorry, work. I'm not going to be there. And you just want to clear your head.
Yeah.
I mean, so sometimes these stories end up like, okay, the person just needed some time.
Yeah, and you're right. Dramatic relationships, pregnancy, breakups,
Right.
fiancés,
And your head spinning. And so
young woman in her 30s. I mean, that.
I'm going to go to New Hampshire for a week, clear my head, and then come back and face everything I got to face. But
Right.
then when you find the car, and
All
you know,
the
here's certain
evidence
things kind
together.
of behind the scenes, you're like, oh my goodness. So yeah,
Yeah.
because she went missing Labor Day, did not show up for the first day of school, and that's pretty dramatic
God,
too.
that is dramatic. I
even-
forgot that was the
and-
first
and-
day.
And as far as we knew, she hadn't told anybody. Look, and I guess it turns out she didn't ever tell anybody. But I'm just taking a little time off. Sorry, I'm going to miss the first day or first few days of school, but I just need a little break. That there wasn't any of that there.
Communication, right.
And sometimes if there is that, the police will say, look, we got a missing person, but you know, we don't think it's critical, and you know, maybe you just need a little time away, and then you back off. It doesn't become a news story. But in this case, there was none of that, and so I'll be honest. I suspected early on this is not going to end well for her. I mean, you look at that smile, and you're like, ugh.
Oh,
you know,
it is
that
so
it's not
painful to
gonna
see.
end.
Yeah.
You didn't know that it might be the boyfriend who was ultimately charged, but I didn't cover it until Tuesday, the day after the news conference.
Okay.
When even then
After
we
that
weren't
one.
sure. Yeah, right. that
Right.
weren't
And
sure.
again, guys, if you're just joining us on YouTube, there's the mugshot. Arrested and charged, and the bond hearing, like we said, is kind of going on in the past 20 minutes.
Yeah, and his birthday's in 2 days.
really?
Yeah, so I think he turns
Oh, my
30. I
goodness.
think he's 32, turns 33 in 2 days.
They're so young. Wow, it's crazy to think about. But we're following this case, and there she is, only woman who was missing for about a week, I guess, or
Yeah.
longer than that. Missed the first day of school.
week.
Teacher in Maryland.
Yeah, so like
found
her body found like
murdered.
10 days basically after she went missing.
And found buried. Do we know she was found buried?
I believe so. I believe she was buried.
As to be disposed of, really.
Yeah, maybe hoping that she'd never be found.
Because cadaver dogs, that's what they do.
Right, and they brought
And that's what
cadaver dogs
happened.
and found them. But I wonder if what his thinking was. You know, like in the
Right.
case, sadly, I mean, you probably talked about it earlier in the week, the case of the Lyon sisters.
Yeah, you were
You know,
comparing that.
Well,
in a sense.
I did mention it
You
briefly
mentioned
on
it.
TV today, but for different reasons, because that was a
Right.
total stranger thing.
Stranger
That was
versus
like-
knowing someone.
Right. But in that case, they believe that the same Montgomery County Police Department believes that that those girls' bodies were burned and then buried
And never found.
And never found. So there are stories where people who disappear are never found. And in that case, supposedly they wanted to make sure there was no evidence. They burned it and buried whatever, the ashes or whatever. In this case, we believe he just buried her body in a shower. So, you know, usually they find those at some point. Although you also in Montgomery County have the 2 kids that are the Hoggle children who've been missing like 3 years now, Sarah and Jacob Hoggle, and you know the mom is in custody, not charged with. She's charged with neglect, not their murders or disappearance, but those kids have not been found. So you wonder, is that another case where these 2 kids, they were 3 and 2 or something when they disappeared, will they ever be found? So in some ways, there's at least some resolution quickly in this case, when in one it went on for 42 years, and in the Hoggle case, all 3 from Montgomery County,
Right.
it's been 3 years, and there's no.
Isn't that amazing?
So were those kids buried or whatever? So sometimes
burned.
you
Yeah.
don't find them. In this case, at least for the people who love and know and
Right.
cared about Laura, they have found the body.
So really an amazing testament to law enforcement and sort of the rapid nature of them figuring this out, right? I mean,
Yeah, but sometimes you're lucky. I mean, these
Yeah.
same very qualified, diligent, hardworking, smart police officers and detectives have not been able to solve the missing Hoggle children case. So, and took
That's so
42
sad.
years to find,
Yeah,
you
that was
know,
amazing.
somewhat resolution in the Lyon sister case. So sometimes you get lucky. It's good, you know, they're good and they work hard and they do their stuff. But sometimes a little luck plays a role. And in this case,
Absolutely.
she was able, the other ones involved children. This adult was able to kind of let people know something's not right here and even send out a picture of where she might be. And
Yeah, that was crazy. So still a lot to
Some
be
luck and some
answered.
hard work.
Luck and hard work, and still a lot to be answered that we also have questions about the pregnancy. Will there be another charge? How exactly did she die?
And what was the motivation? Like, you know,
And the
wh-
motivation.
Why did he do this?
We don't know
Like,
any of
you know,
that.
if 4 months
Yeah.
had gone along, did he not want to be the dad? Did he not want to be with her?
A
Was he getting
relationship.
pressure on other sides for other reasons? Like, who knows?
And even to go to that extreme, though, to kill in any of those circumstances is beyond.
You're right,
any-
because there are tons of people who
Go
accidentally get someone
through
pregnant,
stuff.
and I'm married, and they have.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I just read. I'm not going to mention names, but
Yeah.
like, there's a U.S. senator, former U.S. senator,
Oh.
who just died, who apparently fathered a child with another U.S. senator's daughter, and then kept it quiet. But nobody's killed. You just move on.
Yeah.
You have your baby. I don't want to be a
Right.
part of it.
And that's high profile politics.
Yeah.
They're not.
So people accidentally get other people pregnant that they shouldn't have, they don't want to be directly involved with,
Mhm.
beyond the fact that they've fathered or
Right.
sired a child, and you back off. And everybody lives. She lives. The baby lives. Whatever. So it's awful when in some of these cases the
Mhm.
people involved just snap and
Wow.
or plan to take care of it.
Awesome. Bob, your analysis has been so good.
Oh,
As
sorry.
always, thanks so much. I mean, he's so good. I always love to grab him in the newsroom. And do you think you'll be following more on this case this week?
Probably.
You probably
Well,
get taxed to
tomorrow's
it?
Friday.
Yeah.
If some new,
Comes
interesting, worthwhile, strange development
Sure.
comes about, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're on it. I mean, Matt
You get
Ackland's
totally
there.
all
We have-
over it.
We've been following it day and night.
I know.
I have had just a little bit today, the other
Mhm.
day, so we'll see. But I'm
Yeah.
totally, like a lot of people, fascinated in this story. I just think
Right.
it's
Same.
awful and it's sad, but it's fascinating.
Same. Yeah. Thank you.
bet.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob.
My pleasure.
All right. Bob's going to get back to his normal day.
Which means
Have
I'm
a
going
great
to start
afternoon.
kicking and screaming and causing
Doing
trouble.
some work. Yeah. We're going to play out for you, like we mentioned, that video from yesterday, just so you can see sort of the full scope of that press conference with Montgomery County Police. Quick look now at his mugshot again from today, and then we're going to go right into that video. As always, breaking in with any breaking news as we continue our live stream from our digital newsroom in DC, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll keep an eye on some of our feeds, but we'll go over to that press conference now.
So good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Tom Manger. It's M-A-N-G-E-R. I'm the Chief of Police in Montgomery County. With me are the commanders of our Major Crimes Division, Captain Darren Frank, Lieutenant Sean Gagan, and the commander of our 4th District, Laura Lanham, as well as Paul Starks, our Public Information Officer, and Assistant Chief Daryl McSwain as well. That's everybody. So again, thank you for being here. Today, around noon, detectives and members of the Montgomery County Police Search and Rescue Team were searching a wooded area near Price's Distillery Road in Damascus. They located a patch of freshly dug ground in a secluded area of a field. Cadaver dogs indicated on the area, and ultimately, detectives found the body of Laura Wallen in a shallow grave. Her body has now been recovered. At 5:30 p.m. this afternoon, Tyler Tessier, Mrs. Wallen's boyfriend, was arrested for her murder. Since Ms. Wallen was reported missing by her family 9 days ago, we've determined that Mr. Tessier was the last person known to have been with the victim. They were seen together on surveillance camera video on Saturday, September 2nd, in a grocery store near the victim's home. It is suspected by investigators that she was killed the next day. The victim's sister received texts from Ms. Wallen's phone on Monday morning, September 4th. We have determined that these texts were sent by Tyler Tessier, the suspect in this case. Since this investigation began, Mr. Tessier has provided information to detectives that led them to suspect his involvement in this case. In addition, Mr. Tessier was determined to have driven the victim's car to the Columbia area. He admitted to removing the front tag and disposing of it. Tessier also texted an acquaintance asking for a ride to Baltimore late Sunday night. He said that he needed help to, quote, to clean up a mess. The acquaintance declined to assist him. Mr. Tessier also admitted to disposing of the victim's driver's license and her iPhone. The break in this case came when it was determined that Tessier had made several trips to an acquaintance's property on Price's Distillery Road in Damascus. Investigators showed up there today with a search warrant for the property, which was a dwelling along with open fields and woods. During the search, the team observed tire tracks on a nearby property. They observed a freshly dug ground on the property, which was some distance from the property that they were originally searching. We spoke with the owner of the property where the ground had been disturbed, and we were ultimately able to recover the victim's body. The property owner of that property has no involvement with the case. Warrants for Mr. Tessier's arrest were obtained this afternoon, and he was taken into custody at around 5:30 p.m. this evening. He's being charged with the murder of Laura Wallen. I want to thank the detectives and all of the members of the public, both here and in Howard County, who assisted us with information related to this case. I also want to thank my homicide detectives who worked around the clock on this case and were able to bring it to closure. And in closing, while this arrest does provide some answers, I'm aware of the impact that this had on Ms. Wallen's community in Olney. We know that many of you are grieving with Laura's family tonight. So I'll answer any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
Was there anything in the news conference on Monday in which raised some eyebrows and made you think something was wrong here that would lead you to believe that Tyler Tessier was a suspect in this case? Because he did speak to the media.
That's correct. And the decision to allow him to participate in that news conference was a calculated decision made by the detectives in this case for the express purpose of hearing what he had to say. It was done with the approval and knowledge of the victim's family.
What was in that text message? There was a text message that was sent. The day that Laura Wallen went missing, you all wouldn't tell us what was in it, but the family said it was troubling.
She sent a text message to, and I can't remember if it was her sister or her friend, saying that Tyler had taken her to an open field up in the Damascus area, and she says, I'm not sure why we're up here, but he's taken me to this place in the middle of nowhere, something to that effect. The friend said, take a picture, and she did. And
she was pregnant. Did he give any indication why he allegedly did this?
I can only speculate as to the motive. We have not gotten any information from him about the motive in this case.
Scott Side was able to confirm that he's living with a woman in Damascus. Has that woman been questioned in his investigation?
He's actually got 3 different places where he was living. He'd live in 3 different locations, typically during the week. Everyone who he lived with has been interviewed in this case.
Was this woman known to police when Tyler was introduced to the public as Laura's boyfriend?
Yes.
What led you to the field? What led you to that particular area in which the cadaver dogs then said, we're going to look into this? Why there?
We had been able to determine over the past week that he had made several visits to that area, and we also determined that he would occasionally, during some period of time, would stay there. And so we got a search warrant for that property, which including a dwelling and quite a bit of wooded area and fields. And the search team, our search team, actually did search the perimeter of those entire woods and at some point noticed tire tracks that went into an area of the woods and and that's what led them to the area where we recovered her body.
Will he be charged or can he be charged with the death of the unborn baby?
That's up to the state's attorney.
Chief, was there a history of any issues with the suspect, Smith Wallace?
I'm not aware of any, but I don't know what his criminal record, if any, is.
What is the extent of your conversations with the woman that he lived with in Damascus? Is she cooperating? Has he moved her out? Has anything wrong with him?
I'm not sure where she lived, but I know that we've interviewed her, and I'm not aware of what the results of that interview are.
Chief, had you honed in on Mr. Tessier as a suspect by the press conference on Monday, or was he still a person of interest?
He was definitely a person of interest. We had already identified a couple of inconsistencies in information that he'd given us. And again, it was a calculated decision by the detectives to allow him to speak at that press conference. We were going to be very interested in what he had to say at that press conference. And again, it was done with the knowledge and concurrence with the family. They knew as well.
The family knew he was a person of interest?
Yes.
Can you just clarify the timeline of, for instance, a text message that you said that was sent to the friend? You said September 2nd was the surveillance video of the grocery store.
Yes.
What was that text message?
That was also on September 2nd, which was a Saturday. And then we had nothing, no activity from her phone on Sunday. And then on Monday morning, I believe it was her sister, received texts from Ms. Wallen's phone that were determined later to have that Tyler was the one that was sending those texts.
Were you able to confirm that Laura's disappearance happened around the same time she found out that Tyler was living with another woman?
She had known that for some time.
Are you all talking to the woman that he was living with?
She has been interviewed, yes.
What did she reveal?
I don't know the results of that interview.
How about the other women who were involved here? Easy to button up? I mean, it sounds like he was maybe a little sloppy in some respects. So what would you call him?
I don't think that this was a very complicated investigation. That we were helped by alert residents, both here and in Howard County, who provided us information. We were able to confirm some of the locations where the suspect was through information that the public gave us, and ultimately being able to determine that he had been up to this area in Damascus was ultimately led us up there, and again our search team was able to find the body.
You've been all over this investigation. How does this make you feel?
Listen, this is just one of those tragic cases where you have an absolutely innocent victim, and it's just senseless killing, and these are the kinds of cases that so often have a significant impact on the community where they occur, and that was certainly the case with this investigation, and so we were very saddened I mean, we had a real sense of dread that this was the way it was going to end up, and we were sad when we found the body that confirmed our fears. So these cases are just senseless violence.
Chief, what's going to happen moving forward with the suspect, arraignment date or anything? What's the next step for him, and where is he right now?
He's in our custody right now, and he'll have a bond review probably tomorrow.
Was there any evidence on the
Say again?
How was Laura Loman?
We're going to have to wait for the autopsy to get that. Right now we don't know.
Was there any evidence on the body that would give you some kind of a gauge, like evidence of law enforcement?
Yeah, there was not. So we're going to have to wait for the autopsy to get that information.
Do you know when he sent this to Damascus?
Well, photo was sent, was texted on Saturday, September 2nd. Yeah, the fact that we determined that he would stay up there occasionally, and that he had been up there over the past week several times. And so that led us to get a search warrant for that property where he would stay. And it wasn't until later that we were able to get the photo that she texted on Saturday, and we're able to determine that that photo was taken on this property up in Damascus.
Was there someone who told you that he had been there several times within the last however long?
That information was received through investigation. I'm not going to talk about how we got that information.
I'm sure you've already said this. Is anyone else possibly going to be charged along with Texia?
Right now, he is the only suspect in this case, but as with any case that we have, the arrest doesn't end the investigation. The investigation continues, and but right now, he is the only suspect that's been charged and the only suspect that we are focused on in this case right now. But again, the investigation continues. I can't talk about motive because I don't know what the motive was. I know that people have speculated the fact that he was in another relationship. People have talked about the fact that the victim was pregnant. That's all speculation. I don't know what the motive was in this case. Thank you all very much.
So again, guys, that was yesterday, the press conference with Montgomery County Police. That was the chief. And if you're just joining us, guys, you can, when this stream ends, go back and check out the little conversation that I just had with Bob Barnard, who gave a ton of really good details about this case. Right now, just tweeted out, I'm actually going to move this out of the way, is the list of charges here for Tyler Tessier. And we're going to try to get Matt Ackland possibly on the phone or on Skype, who is covering this today. So take a look at these charges while we try to cue that up. And actually, as we're going to jump in, because it looks like there is a press conference coming out of Montgomery County right now with an update on what just happened. Let's go there.
About what was said in court and what's in the charging documents, as well as discuss process, meaning when the preliminary hearing is and what the next steps are. Without further ado, the state's attorney for Montgomery County, John McCarthy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Let me begin by telling you that Mark Wallen, the victim's father in this matter, is prepared to make a statement to you. He is gathered at this moment with family upstairs in the courthouse, preparing his thoughts about what he would like to say to the media and to the public regarding the death of his daughter. We've left the family alone for some private moments while they put their thoughts together. So I'm here to speak to you. But if you stay behind, Mr. Wallen will be addressing all of you regarding his thoughts and on behalf of the family in just a few moments when they finish upstairs. Tyler Lewis Tessier, age 32 of Damascus, has been charged with 3 counts or 3 charges, including the first-degree murder of Laura Wallen, age 31, a magnificent teacher from Wild Lake High School in Howard County. In addition to the murder charge, which carries a maximum sentence of life without the possibility of parole, the defendant is charged with altering evidence. If you read the charging document that was distributed to you in court, you will see there were various actions or activities taken by the defendant, Mr. Tessier, in the days after he murdered Miss Wallen, changing the evidence, moving her car, taking a tag off of her car, throwing keys or license away. He did tamper with the evidence. It's all contained within the charging document. He also did, and as Donna Fenton mentioned in court, he did give a series of statements to the police, essentially none of which were consistent with the others. I think Ms. Fenton characterized his statements as containing hundreds of lies that the police could prove based on their inconsistency with his other statements or other investigative efforts that were made by the police that showed that what he was telling them was not, in fact, the truth. The defendant today appeared before Zubari Williams, a judge of the District Court for Montgomery County. Judge Williams, at the request of the state, agreed with our request that he be held without bond, and the defendant is held without bond. He will remain incarcerated pending a preliminary hearing date, which is set for October the 13th of this year. I will tell you, for many of you who are experienced covering these cases, that preliminary hearing date will probably never come to pass, because the reality is we will take action, bring this matter to the grand jury of Montgomery County prior to that date. And the only thing that will happen on October the 13th will be the announcement, we hope, of an indictment of the defendant for what we believe are the appropriate charges at that time. As we know from in court today, the defendant in this matter was characterized in court and did characterize himself to some as the boyfriend of the deceased. As was mentioned also in court, there was somewhat of a triangle atmosphere surrounding this, because the defendant, in addition to having Ms. Wallen as a girlfriend, he was engaged to another woman. I think that he was, it was clear, I think, from what was said in court, he was not honest with either of the women regarding the true nature of the relationship with the other. The family was present in court. We have had constant communication. Members of my office, Ms. Herdman and Ms. Fenton, have been working around the clock on this matter. I will tell you, the autopsy in this matter is still pending. It's not done. We do not have the results of that as of yet. As you know, the body of Ms. Wallen was recovered in a field up in Damascus, Maryland. Again, I want to salute the Montgomery County Police Department, the Homicide Division. I think they did a marvelous job following this case, repeatedly interviewing the defendant, challenging him on his inconsistencies, and then using the forensics. They used cell phone records to show that he was repeatedly, night after night after night, going back to the same field. That is the field where Ms. Wallen's body was, in fact, recovered. There is some indication, I think, in the charging document of false texts that were created by the defendant, besides the direct lies that were told to the police to divert the attention away from him and direct it to another individual who, based on the police investigation, had had no contact with Ms. Wallen for more than 2 years and lived in a distant city. This is a horrible ending. I will tell you, the Wallen family, these are marvelous people. They are still struggling, I think, to deal with the loss of their daughter. Mr. Wallen is going to join you in a few minutes to speak to you on behalf of the family. But having said that, I'm willing to entertain any questions everybody has about this.
I know you can't go much beyond, can't go all beyond charging documents, but do you believe that the motive, I believe it's referred to in the charging document, was that he had been caught by Ms. Wallen in his involvement with the other woman?
Well, again, let me just say this. Referring to the charging document, look, I'm not going to speculate as to his specific motive, and I will tell you, this is the trial team. I am going to try this case together with Donna and Mary. We're going to do this together, and I will tell you at the time of trial, we will articulate in great detail what we think the motive was. Obviously, there was a triangle going on here. He was involved separately with 2 women, one of whom he was engaged to, and the other of whom he was out looking for a house with. So I think there's obvious conclusions you can reach from those existing facts.
And you said he was engaged to the other woman, but had asked in the charging document, he had asked Wallen's father for his hand in there.
Yes. Again, I'm referring you back to the charging document that he was strongly romantically linked to 2 women. Obviously, the information being given to the 2 women was not consistent.
Is it fair to say, though, that Ms. Wallen was brought to that field in Damascus believing that he was buying a home for them? Did he put it that way? It's unclear to me from what was said in court.
I think I have to refer you to the charging document. Again, the defendant, if you look at the charging document, admitted that he had gone back to that same field where her body was found. He admits being in that field maybe as many as 10 times from the time that she initially disappeared. Now, his explanation for being in the field was to look for her. But again, that's in the charging document. He made repeated efforts to go to that location to look for her.
Any charges for the death of the unborn child?
Many people have mentioned that. I will tell you, we are in the process of researching that. I will tell you, based on what we believe the law to be, it is, I think, highly unlikely that there will be an additional homicide charge for the death of Laura's child. Some of that is based on concepts of viability and how old the child was at the time of death. We are awaiting information from the autopsy about the precise age of the child at the time of the homicide. To the best of our knowledge, we're talking about 14 or 15 weeks. But we'll know better. And look, I think that's a great question, but we'll know better probably in a few hours. Well, let me say, if the baby was considerably older than we now anticipate it is, and if there was an argument that the child was viable at the time of the homicide, then the law would support a potential of an additional homicide charge. But we don't have those facts, and quite candidly, the facts that we do have would suggest that we're not going to get there. We have absolutely no information whatsoever that suggests anybody else is involved in this case.
You've covered a lot of cases like this in your time here. How would you describe it?
Ethically, there will come a time when I can speak to you about what my personal feelings are about Mr. Tessio. However, he is presumed innocent. He's entitled to a fair trial. I've got my thoughts, and there will come a time when I will share them with you. It's not today.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And Mr. Wallen will be down to give remarks very shortly.
All right, guys, while we wait for the father of Laura Wallen to come out and brief the press, that's what State's Attorney John McCarthy just told us. Take a look at these charges that are just coming out. So Matt Acklin, our reporter who is on this story today, is kind of tweeting out a bunch of tweets regarding the story, and I kind of flashed them through as he was speaking. So there it is: murder first degree, altering physical evidence, false statement to an officer. So take a look at these charges while we queue up some other stuff. We're going to keep an eye on this feed for her father to come out. Apparently he's preparing a statement about his daughter, and we're finding out more details as to the last text messages that were sent and what sort of was found. It was a shallow grave where her purple sweater was peeking out of it. Just some really horrible details coming out of this case. So we'll keep it right here, take a look at this, read through it, and we're going to keep an eye on this feed for her father, who is going to brief the press in just a second. You're watching Fox 5 Live in the digital newsroom in DC. Keeping you up to date on this horrible case. 31-year-old Laura Wallen, who went missing, pregnant with a 4 months pregnant, and was found murdered, buried in a grave. And her boyfriend, Tyler Tessier, charged today in that murder. So more details to come, guys. Check this out, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, so we're back here. Bob Bonner joining us again. Thanks, Bob, for hanging out, because you know more about this, and we're kind of following the tweets here from Matt Ackland. A lot of stuff coming out now. We're waiting on Laura's father to come out. He's preparing a statement, according to John McCarthy, as we speak, to talk about this.
John's great. John's the best, man. He was the #2 prosecutor 20 some odd years ago, and has run the office for a number of years now. And I've read the information coming out of the court. Pretty remarkable, and it's confirming some of the stuff we had suspected and mentioned without knowing for sure that it was going to come out. The whole idea that they believe that Tyler used Laura's phone, pretending to be her, saying, you know, I'm 95% sure it's not his baby, even though it's him writing it apparently.
Right.
And he admits to moving the car, right?
Yep, he admitted to moving the car, using her Easy Pass, taking her cell phone. Again, authorities thinking that he's the one that sent those text messages. I don't know if that's confirmed, but they're kind of starting to get that out there.
And asking a friend to come pick him up, to take him to the car or whatever, and don't tell anybody, you know. So definitely, if you're a detective and you've gotten hold of some of this stuff, I mean, it's incriminating. It doesn't say, I killed her and here's why, but it's very incriminating information.
Yeah, and more details even coming out about the sort of gruesome nature of her death. We don't know. There's still no autopsy done. We don't know the cause of death.
It may have been done. We just don't know the results yet.
But we don't know the results. Apparently, it was a shallow grave, and there was a purple sweater protruding from the ground. This is according to a tweet that Matt just tweeted out.
They found like fresh dirt in this field. Apparently, it's a field owned, I believe, by someone that he works with or knew. And so they went there, and it matches the photograph that she had sent to her sister. It was her sister that she had been in communication with. So the court documents kind of pretty much nail that down, that they were seen on surveillance video at a supermarket, I guess on Saturday.
That was curious.
And then she was going on an adventure. One of her tweets initially to the sister was, "Hey, Tyler's taking me on an adventure." And I don't know if the sister was suspicious or what, but it was like, they said, "Hey, send me a picture of where you are," which obviously led the authorities to that field with the canine, found the fresh dirt, and then her body.
That adventure text suspected to be a fake one from him?
No, I believe it's what she sent to her sister saying, "Hey, I'm going on an adventure," and I don't know, which is horrible if you think she thought they were going on a picnic or something,
right?
And maybe went to the supermarket to get lunch for the picnic. But that's what I read into it, was that Laura was sending a note to her sister saying, "Hey, he's taking me on an adventure."
Yeah,
and really it was to her grave, and whether it was a sister who thought that sounded odd or what. And then in the documents there is mention of him having a long-term relationship with someone else.
Right.
So we were talking about his state of mind. You know, was he afraid of this information coming, like the two paths crossing somehow?
John McCarthy just mentioned he was in a relationship with someone and then looking for a house with someone else. So it's sort of that whole crossover. And he got the question personally, what do you feel about this? And he was like, I have feelings. I will reveal them at a later date.
John is by the book.
Yeah.
I mean, he's great and great on television and passionate.
Yeah.
But if he knows and he'll often say, like, you know, he can't repeat some things they're not allowed to repeat unless they're stated in open court, and he'll often say, "As I said in open court, this." So the judge, the judge happens to be reading the paper or watching the news, will know that he is only repeating what was said in open court. Some stuff, you know, they won't, or they've been told not to talk about. But John's very good, and maybe he was afraid that at this early stage of the prosecution, stating his personal opinion could be something that could come back and be used against him.
Yeah, sure. And I've been trying to kind of scroll through some of Matt Ackland's tweets. I mean, some of them are more detailed than others, but this is an interesting point here that they did use his phone to find that grave. And we were talking about how it was the property of someone he knew. That's what we
believe
thinking.
So. I think, you know, there's a lot of information there. I read it through once. I haven't read it a couple of times, but I believe the property was known to Tyler, and it was owned by someone he knew or worked with. It wasn't his, but someone that he was familiar with, friend, coworker, I can't remember.
Because somehow he had access to that area, right?
And he knew about it. And it was a farm with like 20 acres, and some of it wooded, some a field. And I forget if they said it was in the wood. I think it was more in the field that they saw this soft dirt and
insanity.
sent the dog in, and then found the purple sweater, and oy, oy, oy.
An interesting little just segue here, because we were talking about Tom Fitzgerald's story today about the new iPhone and how the facial recognition, what will that do for privacy, and then also for law enforcement searches for criminals. And this is interesting because, I mean, sort of tie it back to this in a sense. It's kind of a whole different story, but using his cell phone to figure things out, and that's how they got to the grave. So
yeah, and there was another case, and I'm trying to remember which one it was, where they had the phone, and I forget if it was a national case or more of a local case, but they had the phone, and they were trying to get permission to get access to what was in the phone, and you needed a court order. But even then, you know, was Apple going to have to show them how you can get past the encryption or whatever? So yeah, I mean, people are very big into their own, you know, privacy rights. But then for police, if it's a helpful tool, like in this case, clearly having that information from her cell phone.
Oh yeah.
And she's missing, so you know they're able to trace her phone and the contents of some of her text messages, maybe through the other, because I think they said in the documents that he threw the phone. He admits to throwing her phone in a dumpster.
Oh.
So that he I guess admitted to trying to get rid of her phone, but then either they were able through her carrier to get to her text messages, or the people who she had exchanged the messages with provided them to
handed
police.
over, right?
And you know,
must have been so hard for the friend and or sister, whoever it was, to do that. I mean,
well,
it's part of
especially
the
you know, you're hearing that she
search.
thinks she's going on an adventure, and it's not necessarily an adventure. It's
that almost sounds like that was a fake text, but we're thinking that was possibly her.
As I read it, I believe it was in that initial exchange before she was killed. Here's where I'm going, and then I'll take a picture of where we are. Not him afterward, allegedly using the phone to say, you know, by the way, I don't think that the baby is Tyler's.
Right.
Pretending to be her.
Right.
To try to throw them off his, you know, trail.
In fact, we have some of those texts that we're going to show you too. We can flash over to them, but let's go here quickly. So again, more of Matt Ackland's tweets. No bond for Tyler Tessier. He was labeled as a danger to society, according to the judge. And then this one right here, saying that he gave multiple statements with inconsistencies.
Hundreds of inconsistencies. Yeah, they spoke to him several times, you know, after she was missing. And why not? I mean, if either he came forward and said, oh, I'm actually the boyfriend, or someone said, well, that guy Tyler's the boyfriend, we'll go talk to him, and he was brought in not willingly. I don't know if he volunteered, like, hey, she's my girlfriend and I'm missing, or if the family said, Tyler, I just saw two fingers come up.
So, maybe 2 minutes?
So I think, and is that Paul?
We're going to keep our eyes on this.
That's Paul Starks, who just walked out.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
That's Paul Starks, and there's the dad.
Okay, we'll bring this up.
So we'll listen here. That's the father of Laura, and I believe followed by the mother and other people who were in court. And let's hear what he has to say.
Perfect.
Hello. The Wallen family would like to make a statement. Mr. Mark Wallen, father of Laura, will give a statement. He may or may not choose to answer questions. Thank you for understanding.
Good afternoon. A lot has happened in the last 24 hours. I wanted to speak on behalf of our family, how we are coping with the senseless tragedy of the murder of my daughter, our daughter, and sister, Laura Wallen. I've written this from the journal that I keep that was recommended by my best friend and wife of 37 years, Gwen Wallen. In this senseless tragedy with the murder of our daughter, I want to also speak to the beauty and kindness of humanity and all of the wonderful people that have lifted us up. I have 4 points in particular. First, the tireless effort by the Montgomery County Police Force. The police are there to protect and to serve. They have done their job with superb precision, and during this whole process, kept us as updated as they possibly could. Second, our faith community. During this whole process, I repeatedly responded
to texts and emails and prayers of support and concern. I responded to each with variations of the idea that we were praying for a good old-fashioned miracle. God did not give us the miracle that I asked for, but he did give us a miracle nonetheless. We have our daughter back. Third, I want to thank the Wild Lake High School community Laura taught in. They are absolutely amazing. Gwen and I were touched by the video done by her former student, Lindsay Murray, on Twitter called "My Teacher is Missing." It was truly the sweetest tribute to my daughter that any parent could hope for. Thank you to all that made that video production possible and the awareness of my daughter gone missing. Fourth, my fourth point is of the kindness from my band of brothers. I sell surgical equipment as my career. I got a call yesterday that my Carl Zeiss distributor brothers had decided that for our family, they would match the original offer of $25,000 that we had offered this week for information on Laura, making it $50,000. Later on yesterday, I got another call from Behringer Suction Regulators that also wanted to match my $25,000 reward offer. $75,000 is a lot of money. I had been prepared to go out again last night to speak at the Wild Lake event with the police, but with the police finding Laura passed away, the event was not something I could attend, and we went home with family to grieve. I'd like to tell a short story about Laura and my promises to her and my feelings about tattoos. When she was in high school, I told her the same story that I had told her sister about tattoos, that they were good for some people, but not for her. I said to Laura, if you ever get a tattoo, I also will get a tattoo. I said, and you won't like it. And she said, well, what do you mean, Daddy? And I said, well, if you get a tattoo, then I will get a tattoo of a battleship on my butt. And I will show all of your friends every time you come over. And it did manage to keep her from getting a tattoo for her entire high school and college career. On a dare from an old boyfriend, he said that she wouldn't ever get one, but she said, no, I'm going to get one and my daddy will allow it. And she did get a tattoo, and she came home and she had on her left foot the sign of the fish, the Christian symbol, the sign of the fish. And she showed it to me. It could be hidden by a shoe strap. She wore flip-flops all the time. But she said, Daddy, the reason I got this tattoo was to remind me of my walk with Jesus. And I just busted out laughing because I thought, if anything is going to get me off her case, is that. I tried many times when we were in different locations to scratch it off of her foot, but I couldn't because it was in India ink. And so I think that the message that I have is that she was a woman of faith, and right now she is in the arms of God. In closing, I think that the symbol of God's love is marked on her life and ours forever. I would also, in closing, ask you to each hug your kids every day, because nothing is guaranteed and we are all loaned to each other for just a brief period in time. Thank you. Yes.
Struggle going through a previous precedent, Tyler. I wonder how you reflect on that.
I actually I'd written remarks, and I'd taken them out, but I'll put them back because you're asking. The press conference that we did the other day was a press conference to get out a picture and a name of the baby daddy, and it was all we could do to be seen as a unified family with him. He is a monster, and he is a liar, and it was absolutely the hardest thing that my wife could do would be to sit next to him and hold his hand. And she had to hold his hand with two hands because she was shaking so badly. But we did it because, as any father would do, if your child is missing and someone has that child, we were pretty sure it was Tyler, but we didn't know where she was. And you can't put somebody away on a missing person. Someone doesn't go to prison for life on a missing person. And it defies description, the awfulness and the horror that we have been put through on this.
We've all been deceived into this, your family most acutely. Did you feel as though you were being deceived early on? Was Tyler been deceptive towards you all previous to this, or abusive in any way?
He has been deceiving and lying their entire existence, and their relationship was the only thing that Laura and her family ever thought about. Laura is a wonderful girl, so bright, of such a bright future, and he lied to my face when I asked him about the other girl, and said, I haven't seen her in 2 years. I haven't talked to her in 2 years. And I believed her. I believed him. He's a very believable guy.
Finally, his court record is clear, but we wonder if he had ever been abusive towards her. Sometimes those things don't get
No, not that we know of. Thank you.
Wow, that was fascinating.
So fascinating.
Also, this
so
whole story is fascinating.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, but Mark,
It
Wall
really
in there just,
is.
you know, he's a monster. He was a liar.
Right.
He had told the family that he was not in another relationship.
Yeah.
That he and Laura were exclusive. Although you heard him also say that, and this happens with families and people who have relationships, that was their main bone of contention with their daughter was her relationship with this guy, even though he was a charmer or believable, you know, directly like to their face or whatever.
Right. Was it remarkable to you guys? I know some of you are watching. Jay, thanks for your comment. Obviously, our prayers also with his family. Was it remarkable to you how composed he was about this?
Yeah, and excuse me, and yet mentioning also how what they did the other day, believing they
as we were
with their daughter's killer, this monster as they called him, or as he called him. She was having a tougher time going along, and you could see she's wearing sunglasses and holding on to him, her husband, and didn't say anything. But he's a cool cucumber, that man.
Absolutely.
You know? And it sounds like he's got a lot of faith. You know, that he's a
I'm talking about the
faithful man.
The fish tattoo anecdote.
He's Christian, faithful, and so that's perhaps getting him through it. But we were mentioning while he was talking, wow, he is so composed.
Absolutely composed, and looks like we're going to try to maybe Skype in with Matt Ackland, who is there. Let's see if we can get him on. There's Ronnie. Okay, let's see if we can. Yeah, I got him.
Okay, so this will be Matt Ackland, our colleague who's there.
All right, we're going to flip it over. Matt, do you hear us?
Yeah, can you see me all right?
I got you, Matt. Yeah, you're on.
Okay, I'm going to go to a quieter spot. It's kind of loud up here. But go ahead. Hey.
Yeah, if you want to turn it horizontally, you can, if that works for you. But either way, you are on with us. It's me and Bob here. So we just listened to that whole thing. Give us your take here.
Really, really sad, I will say. We didn't expect the family to come out and talk. They've been pretty silent since we last saw them at the press conference. And you heard the comments. I think everybody wanted to know was not only about Laura, which he had some really wonderful things to say about her, but also how they held it together at that press conference. I've seen that over and over again, how they were able to do it. And you heard Mark, the father, speak about that and say, it was all in an effort to make sure that they solved this case. But in court today, the prosecutor really laid out this whole process from basically from the beginning of when Laura was reported missing all the way until her body was located in that distillery. I thought the one thing that really stood out to me was that they were able to use Mr. Tessier's phone, and that's how they saw that he was going back and forth to this location. I guess on your cell phone you can actually be tracked wherever you go. If you look on your cell phone, I've checked on mine, you can actually see where you've been in the last couple of days. It kind of marks depending on the cell tower. So that's how they found it. And then when they went up to this shallow grave, apparently it was about 10 by 10, that's when they saw Laura's sweater. A piece of her sweater was protruding from the ground, a shallow grave, and that's when they realized it was her. Apparently they had asked Mr. Tessier earlier in one of the interviews what she was wearing, and he pointed out she was wearing a purple sweater on that day. And stop me, I'll just keep going on some of the other thoughts in court too today. I remember that they were also talking about having several interviews with Mr. Tessier over time, 5 to 6 different statements or interviews. And they said during that time, he made hundreds of inconsistencies in what he was saying. So obviously they were suspicious. That likely was the reason that they had that press conference. All of these things were happening behind the scenes while many of us were just reporting that she was still missing. But it must have been part of the investigative role to keep this from the public knowledge until they knew where not only Laura's body was, but how they could connect it to Mr. Tessier.
And Matt, I read the press release. The property in Damascus, how is that related to Tyler?
That's a good question, Bob. I do believe that it might have been a family friend. I'm reading through the documents, but I know there were 2 particular properties we were looking at. But I think it was a friend of his family that owned that distillery. I'm not 100% on that, but somehow it was connected to a place where he had been before. And then I heard today, Bob, that also he had revisited that location about 10 times. And he had told investigators that he was looking for Laura. That's why he kept going back there. He said he was looking for Laura, and then come to find out that's where her body was located.
One of the things Molly and I were talking about when you guys were still in court earlier. You hear us okay?
You got us?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry. It's just loud out here, so I'm putting my ear close. Sorry.
No, please do. Was the dad there, Mark, at one point said, we're just going to, he mentioned like this guy's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And one of the things Molly and I were talking about is that, if they've got so much evidence against him, there's a chance he could plea and make a plea deal. You would think he'd want to, for his part, get something like 30 years, but you got the sense there from the family that they want this guy put away forever. So who knows how that'll play down the road in any kind of plea dealing.
Right, and then you probably heard John McCarthy speak a little bit earlier saying that, there is, by procedure, another court hearing, but what will happen behind the scenes, Bob, as you know, for covering courts all the time, is they seek a grand jury indictment. So that moves that process up. And basically, when a grand jury indicts you, then, they have enough to go ahead and move forward with this. So, what could happen beforehand is he realizes this grand jury indictment is coming. In fact, there was just one recently in another case, and grand jury indictment was coming. I believe in the case of Trisha McCauley, who was the yoga instructor, who the suspect in that case recently pled, because there was a grand jury that had been seated, a grand jury that was about to reach an indictment, and that's why the plea deal was made, because sometimes if they know that indictment's coming, they make a plea deal, and hope for leniency when it comes to the judge they get.
Right, and then again, it's maybe up to the prosecutors to work with the family. Are you okay if there's a chance he could get out in 20 or 30 years or something? We'd have to see how that plays out.
Right, and it also sounded, Bob, like the father was always wary of him, and he said the only time that they had ever fought was over this Tyler Tessier, and it sounded like he had a really great relationship with his daughter.
Yes.
Except when hi, how are you? Just a Fox 5 fan.
Absolutely, they're all over the place.
But yeah, it sounded like it was a really close relationship, and you know, I was having a hard time hearing, but he called him a monster and a liar, correct?
Yes.
He referred to
and he
him
also
as
said that Tyler had told him that he was not in any other relationship, that it had been a couple of years since he'd even spoken to this other woman.
Right.
Right. And yes, said that he hadn't seen him in Tyler told Dad that he hadn't seen her in 2 years, this other woman, and it's just terribly sad. And you know, Lauren DeMarco's story last night really was one of that stood out to me. All of the students, apparently Laura was so loved by all of her students, some of them saying the reason that they graduated was because of her input. So that's the very latest. If you can see here, this is the charging document. It really is thorough here. A lot of details that we're just learning about today. I'm going to go through this and then complete wrap up coming up tonight at 5 and 6 on Fox 5 News.
Yeah, I know you want to go, Matt. Just one of the things that I read in there that Molly and I were
we
talking
put
about,
it up.
which was, well, one of the things that was heartbreaking was that that in the text message from Laura to her sister, she indicated that when she was going to meet her untimely death, that she thought she was going on an adventure with Tyler's, like, tell her, hey, we're going on an adventure. So maybe she thought she was going on a picnic or something. How sad is that she was actually going to meet her demise and thought she was going on an adventure with this guy?
Right. And then, you know, also, Bob, that's true. I think that they were maybe going to look for a home or something. And then I thought was interesting, and I tweeted this out earlier today from the criminal document, the text messages that were received on September 4th. That was last week, Labor Day.
Yeah.
And come to find out, they actually listed out what the text messages said. One of them said, I am like 95% sure Tyler is not the father. I'm probably going to lose my job over this. I'm going to try and get a hold of Antoine. That apparently was somebody that Laura had some kind of relationship with in the back, and then in the past. And then there's one that says, Tyler is never going to forgive me. If he tries to call you, please tell him he's a great guy, because I know I really hurt his feelings. And I think that's when her sister picked up on it and said, Lori doesn't really write like that. These are kind of odd text messages. And in turn called authorities. And it come to find out, now authorities believe that it was Tessier who actually typed these. He admitted to these and sent them to possibly throw off the family as if nothing was wrong. He also admitted to taking the car out to that parking lot in Columbia, taking an Easy Pass from Laura's car, taking her cell phone, all of these different things. And apparently they found out by the car because he took her license out of her wallet and threw it into a dumpster. A neighbor in that apartment complex found it, called and said, hey, I found this, and that's what led authorities to find her car.
Yeah, and I believe what I read, I believe it said that he admitted throwing her phone in a dumpster as well.
Right, yeah.
So crazy.
So,
I know he's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay, guys. Good day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. So a ton of new details coming in about this, and really just amazing. And I think I'm still overcome by the fact that the father was so composed talking about this lying and cheating, murderous boyfriend, and yet threw in, a humorous anecdote about his father-daughter life, and was able to be forgiving
Do you have
in a
another
way.
picture somewhere of the two, Tyler and Laura?
Yeah, I'll bring it up right now.
Think, when you see them, here are two people whose lives, one's gone,
There they are.
and the other one is gone too, because no doubt this guy's going to be probably locked up for a long time. And it's just, when you think about that, it's like, oh my gosh, the lives, his family, her family.
Right.
There's so many people that these two people that supposedly were in love, she's going to have his baby and they're going to go looking for a home and all that. how awful it turns out, and how many people not only directly related to them, but the school communities and his work communities and people who loved him now thinking, oh my God. It's just, it's sadly it happens all the time, but when it happens here,
is a lot of heartbreaking details coming out of this, and we appreciate you guys watching the stream today for this breaking news, and thankful that Bob was here because you're here during the day and you were able to cover a piece of this morning. So thanks so much.
Up at the school, they've had grief counselors, and one of the things they told us was the grief counselors were there at Wild Lake High School in Columbia, where Laura taught. They were there today to speak to the students, but of course her colleagues, her coworkers, current and former, are also grieving, and they're going to need some help too.
Absolutely.
You know, the adults in her life.
And
including her family.
More details come out about this. Of course, there's still a lot of questions that are unanswered that we'll continue to follow here on digital and on air throughout the week. So we want to thank you so much for joining us, and thanks, Bob, for your help.
My pleasure. All right, see you guys. Thanks.
Thanks. You'll see him again in the newsroom. But again, guys, thanks for joining our stream. A lot of breaking news coming out this early afternoon, and we're so happy to bring it to you from our digital studio here in Washington, D.C. at Fox 5 DC. Like I said, continue to follow us on all our digital platforms, fox5dc.com. We're going to update this story as much as those details trickle in. Matt Ackland will have the full story as he puts together everything from these notable press conferences just this afternoon about this really, really tragic, heartbreaking case. And of course, more follow on this in the morning and throughout all our shows really through the week. So we'll be back for Fox 5 Live, of course, 11:30 tomorrow here in the newsroom. Thanks for checking in with us here, guys. If you missed a portion of this as the stream stops, you can go back and check some of our interviews that we did with some of our reporters and news people in the studio for more details, trying to bring you the latest with tweets and video and pictures and everything that we have coming together. All right, with that, guys, on that heartbreaking note, we'll have more for you throughout the evening and tomorrow.